It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Jason Snell's back. Andy Inoco's here. Alex Lindsay, too. Apple says we stopped billions of dollars of fraud in the App Store. Maybe there's a little subtext there. We'll examine that. TSMC is now completely bought up by Apple, 90% of their capacity for the year. We'll talk about that and what that portends for June 5th and WWDC. That and a lot more coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 870, recorded Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. Building my Beaver Dam. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. Go to HelloFresh.com/MacBreak16. Use the code MacBreak16 for 16 free meals, plus free shipping. And by Miro. Miro is your team's online workspace to connect, collaborate, and create together. Tap into a way to map processes, systems, and plans with the whole team. Get your first 3 boards for free to start creating your best work yet at Miro.com/podcast. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show we cover the latest news from Apple as we get prepared for WWDC, just a few weeks off. All we've got is rumors, cavils, and tremors. Mr. Jason Snell, visiting from his home in beautiful Marin. Did you have a nice time with Mom on Mother's Day?
I did. It was, well, for her birthday. She is the unlucky type who has her birthday right around Mother's Day, so she always gets the twofer. But it's nice, and yeah, we had a nice time. Of course, Apple announced Final Cut, as you know, Final Cut and Logic for the iPad on her birthday. Happy birthday, Mom! I had to explain her what those were.
Did you have to write a whole bunch of stuff that day?
I wrote about 2,000 words that day, but
God.
it was while she was doing something else. So it worked out. But it is. I feel like, Leah, the logjam is breaking a little bit. We're getting this week was a clear the decks week for Apple, where it was like, okay, let's get some stuff out there that we're not going to spend any time on in June. So that's nice to have a little bit of news at least.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that in a moment. Welcome back, Jason. We missed you.
Thank you.
And we did. You don't have to talk about the iPad version, in fact, Final Cut. We did that.
Thank you.
We did that
Extra
for you.
Thank you.
Andy Inoco here from WGBH in Boston, from his home in New England. Hello there, New Englander.
Hey there, hi there, ho there. Yeah, you got to see, as soon as I saw like the news that dropped this morning, I was like, oh, some product manager probably bought like a new shirt or something, or new shoes, because they were in the keynote up until like 3 days ago. And then, you know what? You got cut. We're going to do you as a press release on Tuesday. Hey, but if you stay in your office, we'll let you do like a day's worth of briefings with the media.
Oh. Also here from the beautiful officehours.global and 090.media. Alex Lindsay.
Hello,
Alex.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to be here.
So I'm sorry, did Apple drop some news this morning? You scared me, Andy.
A little bit.
Yeah, it was more of a flex. They dropped a press release. Okay, actually, there are 2 things. The one that I'll mention is that a press release mentioning, hey, we prevented over $2 billion worth of fraud on the App Store. Gosh. I wonder if the fact that you can't sideload apps has anything to do with the fact that we're able to prevent people from being victims of fraud on the. Well, it's not for me to say, I'm sure, but hey, for no reason,
it would be a shame if you would have to let that fraud go through. They also terminated 428,000 developer accounts for potentially fraudulent activity. 105 million fraudulent developer account creations blocked. 282 million fraudulent customer accounts deactivated, and 1.7 million app submissions turned down. Some of them is probably not fraudulent, but just,
exactly.
Something we don't like about it, So 400,000 app submissions rejected for privacy violations. Okay. 150,000 app submissions rejected for spam, copycats, or misleading users. Copycat can include copying software that Apple provides. And nearly 29,000 app submissions rejected for containing hidden or undocumented features. That's, for the most part, I'm sure that's good.
Sure.
That, by the way, does not add up to 1.7 million. There's still more than 1 million apps, so we don't know why they were rejected. And that's kind of the state of the App Store. All right, good for you, Apple. You're right. It is a little bit of a, hey, they are going to have to, though, this summer. They're going to have to do what the EU wants them to do. In the EU, at least, they'll have to offer sideloading, right? I mean, that's not.
It's the end of the year, isn't it? Or is it the summer?
Yeah, it's the end of the year.
End of the year? Okay.
Year.
But it's coming.
The stories are that they're building it into the OS, but it won't be anything they announce yet. They're just working on it behind the scenes. Yeah, I'm
sure they've got crews of engineers working round the clock to make sure they've got exactly compliance without creating a feature that anybody would ever want to bother to actually use.
Yep.
That takes finesse, and I'm sure they're investing all the manpower they got.
I'll be honest, they should just go ahead and do it, because no matter what they do, people 99% are just going to keep using the App Store. Yes. Most people are not going to say, and so what are they worried about? Epic or somebody saying, hey, come here.
Well, I mean, as the advocate for the user, I would say that the thing that I'm concerned about is that you have a Facebook or you have somebody else or someone says we're only going to release stuff on this new one, which means that as a user, I now have to jump out if I want to use it's large companies going down
that's suicide for almost anybody but the most committed user to something like Do we really think that Facebook, because keep in mind, Apple's going to make everybody jump through a bunch of hoops and have that dialog box that comes up that says, if you do this, you may die. And then you say yes, just to get Facebook. I could see it for Facebook, maybe for something like Steam or the Epic Store or something like that they might be able to talk people through it. But most people are going to get to that wall and they're going to be like, no, I'm not going to do that.
I'd love to put Steam on my iOS devices. That's a good example. And I think Steam users would probably do that, right? Because they want Steam. Right. Regardless of what hoops Apple provides. Is that a huge
I think the
detriment to Apple? I mean, is that like, oh my God, this is the end of the world for Apple if the Steam store's on Apple?
I guess the biggest hope will be whether they fork it or not. If they just fork it and say, if you're in the EU, you can only, that'll devastate the store. You'll never get much on the side loading if Apple says, well, the EU said we had to do this, and so we'll only do it on EU phones.
I don't agree.
That'll be the end of it.
Because once they engineer it and it's known to exist, you've provided a template. I keep thinking about this, and I think the way it works is if they do something, because that's the story that we've, I think, talked about before, that they may be readying this with some very specific system features that basically detect where you're from and only enable it in certain circumstances. But I will say, once it happens there, every other regulator can look at that and say, oh, you've got this thing that you built for the EU. Now you need to turn it on for us, and then it's
the question is if you buy another 2 years.
Yeah, you do. Sure.
That's you buy another 2 years. In the United States, you have a problem because you have a court system. So that
barely.
But I'm just saying that a court system that right now would probably not support doing the regulation that they're trying to do. I think it would be probably a pretty uphill battle, in the United States to get it done. And without the United States market, the side loading is kind of dead in the water.
I guess I'm still asking though, why bother doing this? Just let it happen because nobody's going to use it.
Because Apple does not like to be told what to do when it's something that they don't want to do.
That's petulant. That's a 10-year-old.
That's Apple. That's the magic of Apple. That's I'm not joking about that.
So they're doing it out of petulance, no other reason.
I don't think so. I think that they're really doing it out of the concerns that I'm putting out. Like that.
Nobody's going to use it, Alex. If you have that as an option, you're not going to use it. Nobody's going to use it. People, it's the tyranny of the default. We know this already. People use Microsoft's Edge browser. In a great majority of Windows users, people are not going to sideload. End of story. The only people will be gamers maybe for Steam. Even then, that's only because you can't get it otherwise, right? If Apple would just let everybody, put their stuff on the main store, then nobody would use it, a side loading thing. I'd love to see the stats from Google, because Google does allow that on Android. And I suspect that's a very tiny minority of people using it.
Right. To Alex's point, too, I mean, one thing the EU thing, if it does happen, might show is, like, Apple has said it's a Pandora's box. Well, we'll see, right? And that could be very interesting, because it may be that Alex is proven right and that it is a Pandora's box and that nobody else is going to open it. It could also be that Leo is proven right and it turns out to not be that big a deal. And Apple's like, oh, I guess we shouldn't be that worried about it. Or maybe it'll be.
We have a data point, though.
We'll find out.
We have a data point. We know from Android.
We know from Google. Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, it's a different platform. I mean,
it's an even more likely to use side loading platform, if you ask me, than Apple users. Apple users love their warm, gated community and are, I think, even less likely to side load. So I think if there's no side, I wonder if we could get some stats on side loading on Android.
I think just quick sidebar here that remember that China does not have access to the Google Play Store, so it is a market that has huge Android penetration, where almost everything is side loaded from China only app stores. So I just don't think it'll be that big of a deal. I think that Apple is going to limit it to just the countries where they absolutely have to do it. Remember that there was a rumor, was just a few weeks ago, about Apple reshuffling some fundamental architecture about macOS to be able to turn features on and off via based on where the phone is registered or where the phone is actually located or where the phone number is registered to. Yeah. So that does seem like they're trying to make this into a turnkey system where if a law gets passed on Tuesday, they can comply on Wednesday, as opposed to trying to figure out all this holistic stuff and seeing what's going to break.
And the thing is, I still think they're just going to fork the EU, and then any problem that occurs, anybody that gets defrauded, anything that goes wrong will be, press release.
Yeah, there'll be more of these. There'll be more of these self-serving press releases in the App Store, but
including the fraud that already happens on the App Store.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think my fundamental thing
2 years ago, but this one
now it's really a problem.
Now it's because of side loading. Yes,
I think my argument fundamentally though is that they are not a majority holder in the market, and that the EU probably shouldn't be doing this at all. It's not their business.
You can make a philosophical argument. Agree.
It's 90% of the market.
From a purely practical point of view, it's meaningless in the long run, and Apple should just stop being petulant and say, fine, whatever you want.
I don't think that the EU has the right to do what it's doing unless it says it does. And I don't think Apple has the requirement to do any more than they have to, because it's a dumb idea. It's dumb to...
Well, that's where we disagree. I think it's meaningless.
It's wrong. It's not dumb. It's wrong.
That's Apple's. That's the 10-year-old point of view. I'm not going to do it because it's wrong philosophically. Whether it's meaningful practically is, to me, more.
When someone tells me to do something that I think is wrong, I do with a minimum requirement, minimum effort. It's MVP. If you tell me that I should do something that I think is wrong,
there's another phrase for that. It's called malicious compliance.
Yeah, I've done that since I was younger than 10.
Yeah, that's what teenagers do.
But you don't. Yeah, that's what everybody does. That's what almost everybody does when they're forced to do something they don't think is a good idea. Everybody does that, all the time. Is minimum requirement when you're forced to do something that is something you don't want to do.
But sometimes you are wrong. I'm not you specifically. I'm saying that there are people who the small claims court said that you definitely owe me $680 to repair this dent that you put in my car with my security camera saw you do as my next door neighbor. So guess what? You're going to come by and you're going to give me 68,000 pennies in bags dumped on my driveway. That doesn't mean you're right. That means that you're being a jerk about it. That means that at some point you have to accept this reality and say that, okay, this is the world that I live in. I fought the good fight, and now we have to make the best of what we have.
And the EU has standing. I mean, let's face it.
Right. So
they have standing. They
Apple,
can say this.
Apple can say that. I mean, the EU can say that, and Apple can be philosophically saying, we don't think you should be able to do that, and we're not going to give you any more than you asked for.
Yeah.
And I think
that's what Apple's going to do. I don't doubt that in the least.
Yeah, and it's what I would do.
Yeah, but we'll see.
I would absolutely give you not 1 millimeter more than what you asked for.
Apple also launched new concert discovery features on Apple Music and Apple Maps. So now you can look at the map and see a concert near you.
Yeah. this is they already had this in the Photos app. If you look at your historic photos, if you've been to any concerts, they actually have this built in where they know the location and they know the time, and they actually have a database of live events, and they will say this is the so and so concert at this event. It's pretty. The first time you see it, you're like, whoa! Like how does it know? And they're trying to extend that, which is smart. Extend that to other places. This is a very small thing to announce. I wonder what, like, I guess this was part of their
this was keynote
current
stuff,
OS
right?
cycle,
And then
current OS cycle, and they need to make good on it before the next OS cycle begins. Yeah,
this is an old thing, though. I mean, I remember many social networks, probably Apple's own Ping network, doing this kind of thing. Spotify and other music playing things will say, "Oh, I see you like Sam Brown. He's going to be performing down the road." I guess it's good to incorporate it into Apple Music and Apple Maps.
I mean, I've used Bands in Town to do the same thing.
Yeah, Bands in Town. That's it. Yeah. That's been around for decades.
But it's hard to figure out. Here's the thing that this solves is that Bands in Town doesn't give you a map, or at least that I know of. And so it's really, I actually saw it and I was like, this is going to be something I'll use all the time. Like literally, when I travel, I'm going to be like, I wonder if Toad the Wet Sprocket is playing somewhere nearby, or something like that, and be able to see that. That'd be awesome.
Bands in Town's been doing it since 2007. So it's, anyway, it's good. Yeah, it's built into the iPhone.
It's great.
That's fine. Yeah, woohoo. Do you think these are all things that Apple was going to announce at WWDC or?
I don't know if that one would have raised high enough to end up in WWDC.
Here's one that's actually timely, which it was Accessibility Day. When is Accessibility Day? Today.
I believe.
Happy Accessibility Day. Apple, in celebration or commemoration, introduces new features for cognitive accessibility along with live speech, personal voice, and point and speak in Magnifier. What's the cognitive one? That's interesting.
Yeah, so there's like they've done this for the last. They definitely did it last year. I think they've done it for the last few. And essentially, what's interesting about it is they are pulling forward features from the next OS cycle that they're going to announce in June. But they're pulling these forward to highlight. And they're not going to be the only accessibility features, but they like to pull some highlights forward because Apple has talked a lot about being committed to accessibility features. So for this day, they decided to do this again. And the cognitive one, it sounds like there are a lot of things that are like being able to react with a basic emoji set if you can't use the typing system, right? So they've tried to do, there's a lot of stuff in here. It's like a simplified launcher where you can set a certain limited number of apps with big buttons to basically make it so that there aren't multiple layers of interface, that everything's sort of on a simple single layer of interface. And the argument there is that may be for very young or very old people who cannot
Samsung
grasp the interface.
Has long offered on its Android devices an easy mode that is big, simple. And of course, there's been phones for seniors for years, like the Jitterbug, that have big buttons and things like this. This is what Apple says. Assistive Access uses innovations in design to distill apps and experiences to their essential features in order to lighten cognitive load. The feature reflects feedback from people with cognitive disabilities and their trusted supporters, focusing on activities they enjoy and that are foundational to iPhone and iPad, connecting with loved ones, capturing, enjoying photos, and listening to music. My mom, who's 90 and is cognitively slowing down, her memory's really gone. That's the first thing to go is short-term memory. I had already digitized all the family slides, and I made a slideshow on her Amazon Echo. She loves it. That's exactly the kind of thing, she wants to see slides from the good old days. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing Apple's doing. Yeah. Here's some pictures of this simplified interface, the Photos interface. Very simple.
I actually like that interface.
I mean, not all of us. We were all suffering from cognitive overload, to be honest.
I got really relaxed just looking at the interface.
Isn't that pretty? The pictures they chose.
Nice.
Yeah, and then here's the camera. It's got a big button that says "Take photo."
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah,
don't see any problem with that. Here's calls.
They have an accessibility feature that says never sideswipe, never let any app sideswipe.
Well, so I'm looking at that and I'm wondering what the UI is for this Photos. I guess you just scroll up and down, right? Or what?
I think that's it. They said specifically they're trying to get rid of lots of hierarchy because apparently big surprise, hierarchy is a little bit confusing for all of us, not just people with cognitive disabilities.
Yeah.
So, and if you live long enough, you're going to need accessibility features, right? That's the bottom line. And you don't, I mean, accessibility features are some of the best features. Yeah, absolutely.
Unless we die prematurely, we all will. This is fun. I love this is to dispel the notion that people with cognitive issues are somehow, boring slugs. Dance party, baby. And it's very simple. It's got a play button and a pause button, and it just puts dance music on. And you know what? That actually, my mom would love that.
Yep.
Here's a simplified emoji list with big ones. So mom can just, I will do this for my mom for sure. I think this is great. I like this idea. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that they also have this feature that they actually specifically said was of use for ALS, although I'm sure there are other uses for it. But it's such a cool idea, which is that they will let you build a voice. It's a computer text-to-speech voice, but it builds on device using an algorithm on device. They interview you. You basically have to say a bunch of words. So you can't use a canned voice of somebody else because it's asking for very specific words. And that's their way to sort of like make sure that you've got approval for using the voice. But the idea here is that people with some conditions, they lose the ability to speak. I was actually thinking about Andy's old friend, Roger Ebert, where this happened to him, and they tried to build him a voice. Technology has gone to the point now where if you know that you're in a situation where you may lose your voice, you can go through this step, and then after you lose your voice, you can use the speech text feature on your iPhone to communicate, and it comes out in your voice. I think it's really, I think it's just a cool, amazing feature for people who are potentially, in that terrible condition of not being able to speak.
I actually did this. There's a company already doing this called Acapella. And it's exactly as you said, Jason. You record a bunch of, it was 215 phrases, things like, I'm typing this, so please be patient. And then you read all of those, and then I have to find the email from them. Let me see, because they sent me my my voice, because I spent quite a while doing this. Let's see, MOV. Here it is. I'm going to go to the website. Minutes. Yeah. No,
that's one way to prevent abuse. Is it actually requires a lot of time and effort to
and you can add. What's nice, you can add custom messages. I could say, Jason, I need to go to the toilet now, and then you would have
a nickel.
You would have to respond. Let me just log in real quickly to my voice, and it's not perfect, but you know what? It's observably your voice, which will for caretakers, this would make a huge difference. Here, let me play a little bit of my what would you like me to say? Let's try this one. Jason, can you open a window, please? And here's my voice. Oh, it generates it, and then I have to play it. You don't have my sound on. Would you like to turn on my sound, and we'll try
Jason,
it again?
Can you open a window, please?
That's pretty good.
Jason, can you open a window, please?
Okay, Leo, I usually do Mac and not Windows, but I'll do it for you.
So this actually, they have apps on iOS and Android. They have a variety of ways. So what you would do is you'd record your voice. You get 3 months free access, the Acapella Move app on iOS and Android, or the TD Talk app on iOS. So that's basically what Apple's doing. I wonder if Apple's voices will sound better.
Yeah, I wonder what tech they're using for it.
And when I saw 15 minutes, I was like, well, where's the 20-hour version? like I would love to map it completely and have me just read lots and lots and lots of things to give it what it needs to really map it, as opposed to, I feel like 15 minutes is great, but what for those of us who want to turn it up to 11?
Let me
and also just being able to preserve that part of yourself.
Yes.
And keep that part of your identity.
Yes.
And it's no small thing.
Let me play one more,
Roger.
Just because this is longer.
Welcome to MacBreak Weekly, and the show that is full of rumors, cavils, and tremors.
That's pretty close. I mean, you could tell it's me, right? Did Roger use something like this?
No.
Because Stephen Hawking's voice it sounded very mechanical, right?
And American,
but also
an American.
But this really gets into like what we're talking about here. Stephen Hawking had the ability to have a much, much better voice model than the one that he was using on his chair. It is a very, very old, basic voice model. But number one, the voice that had trained it was one of his friends eons ago. And secondly, he did regard that as his voice. He did come to think of it as, well, why would I change my voice? Just like you wouldn't change your voice. Roger, actually, I can't remember which one it was, but he picked of the standard Macintalk voices. He picked the one that had the that he said made me sound like Sir Laurence Olivier, and that was like that was one of the ones he always stuck to. But he had there was a company, I think in Ireland, that was because he was Roger Ebert and because he had resources. And because also he was a professional broadcaster and he had thousands of hours of recordings of his voice, they were able to create a synthetic version of his voice that even 15 years ago was absolutely recognizable as him. There was something off about it, of course, but it was definitely recognizably him. And now, I mean, Google Research just showed off a paper 3 months ago about a model that requires minimal training. Like Alex said, if you have 5 seconds of voice, it can get something that is, okay, I recognize the identity of this person. If you can give the model 2 to 5 minutes of voice, you can give something that's good enough for phone. And if you give them 10 to 15 minutes, then it's probably good enough for ongoing conversation. And then the more data you give it. But the thing is, you even starting with just 5 seconds to a couple of minutes is enough. So how many people have voicemails that they've sort of kept on their device? We're getting this is something that I really enjoy the thought of about what technology can do. That think about when you lose a loved one unexpectedly. And everyone has a different kind of mourning process. And a lot of our traditions are objectively weird. Okay. And so if I decided that, you know what, I'm missing my mom, something terrible, but I have a whole bunch of her voicemails to me. I'm going to build like a 2-minute voice model of her so that whenever I ask about the weather for my smart speaker, I know it's not her, but I'll be hearing her voice like every single day, and that'll sort of help me get through this process. And a year later, I'll switch to something else probably. But these are the sort of problems that technology could never have predicted they could solve. But now we have the opportunity to see where does that fit in our rehabilitation when we lose our voice? Where does this fit when, again, we're grieving for a loved one? And these things are not questions that we can actively ask ourselves because we have solutions.
Yeah, they've been using 11 Labs to do the virtual Leo Dr. Do in our IRC. Is mentioning that he had posted something in our Mastodon, which I missed, Dr. Dwayne. I apologize about this. But the one that we use from 11 Labs isn't perfect. I think they're getting better. I really do. Yeah. Roger used, according to Scooter X, Siraproc.com but that was in 2009.
I actually wrote him like for his first few months a piece of software that every time there's something that he wanted it to do, he'd like email me like at 1 a.m. and then I try to get him a rev by like 3 or 4 in the morning. Wow. And that's another thing. I mean, these tools that are designed to be one size fits all, but you have peculiar uses and peculiar needs, some things that you really, really want to be able to say immediately and quickly. I mean, again, hanging out with Roger after he lost his voice, part of the adjustment that people around him had to make was that I think everybody who listens to the show understands the idea of we're waiting for each other to finish their thought, but we have something we really want to say. And unfortunately, it was really hard to get those cues from Roger. And I'm not going to keep talking until I'm really tuned into his expressions to see, is there something that he wants the focus because he wants to actually type something and say something or write something out and hand the note for someone else to say. These are the things that technology should be working on. We shouldn't be, gadget watches are nice. And like fake photos of squirrels running for Congress, also fun. But it's not that these things are wastes of time, but there are opportunities for technology to fundamentally improve lives. And collectively as society, we should never just stand by and let the pitch go by.
Dr. Dew says that his partner lost her mom last summer. So he took old videos, synthesized them at 11 Labs, and had her mom's voice read a favorite poem for her.
Yeah.
And apparently it was quite moving. Here's the 11 Labs Leo voice, which I am not moved by. Jason, I need to go to the toilet now. Actually, that's pretty good.
It's got better intonation, but sounds less like you personally.
Jason, I need to go to the toilet now. No, that's me.
Okay.
Just go in the chair. That's why it's a bucket seat, Leo. Next week, we'll get you astronaut diapers.
So this is what Apple is saying about, they call it live speech and personal voice advanced speech accessibility. With live speech on iPhone, iPad, and Mac, users can type what they want to say to have it be spoken out loud during phone and FaceTime calls, as well as in-person conversations. So I guess some people it's easier for them to type than it is to, I guess that makes sense, to speak, like Stephen Hawking. Yeah. Users can also save commonly used phrases to chime in quickly during lively conversation with family, friends, and colleagues. Here's the example. You weren't kidding about the view. Or, Jason, I need to go to the toilet. Live speech has been designed to support millions of people globally who are unable to speak or have lost their speech over time. This is fantastic. I mean, God bless Apple. This is great.
I think that where I see this going, if enough people sign up for it, is that you get the texts, and when it plays out the text, it's in the person's voice. Like if
Wouldn't that
everybody,
be cool?
This is how it starts. Is a lot of Apple stuff starts as accessibility and then becomes a general feature. So you started off with, okay, we're going to do this because there's this is a great place to test it. This is the first people that will need it. But I could definitely see any text that comes in, just if there's a voice connected to that text,
right?
I get to hear it.
Yeah.
Just think this is so fascinating because this is part of what Google was showing off last year, the year before, with their one-to-one conferencing system, where it's not just you feel as though there's a pane of glass between yourself and the person you're speaking with across the country, and it's not just because it's high definition. It's not just because the frame rate is very high. It's because the system is literally creating a 3D model of the person you're speaking to and putting that in the screen next to you, so that it works. If you change your viewing angle, the 3D model changes as well, as though it's a 3D object that you're now seeing the other side of. I mean, we worry about one of the longest questions about increased resolution, increased frame rate, increased virtual reality stuff has been, yes, but how are we going to get like 4K 60 120 frame per second video with surround sound getting pumped through like a average like home broadband? And the answer is, you don't. You just send the actual data. There's a 30-second delay in setting up the call, in which an avatar and a voice model are sent to your screen, so that it can just simply get the text that someone is saying and get like the movement data from that simple like HD camera, and then tell the puppet at the other end, here is how Andy should look when he's doing exactly this at this moment. It's really quite interesting, and that's one of the things that makes VR and augmented reality more interesting than just hovering directional arrows and a cartoon fox that waves at you to tell you that you have a call coming in.
Here's the poem. Dr. Dew posted it in our Discord that he got synthesized for his wife, his partner.
My life with warmth and light, your smile, your laugh, your gentle touch are the treasures that I cherish much. I remember the day you came home, a bundle of joy, so lovely.
That's pretty good.
And as I held you,
that's 11 Labs. I mean, I don't know what her mom sounded like in real, and it's a little robotic, but still probably good enough. The other thing that he points out, which is really cool, you can also do it in foreign languages in your voice. So suddenly I could speak French or Spanish or German. It's not perfect, they say, but so this is what the interface will be. It does look a lot like acapella. It even reminds me of acapella. I wonder if Apple's licensing it. So you'll be reading 150 phrases, like grabbing a cup of coffee this afternoon sounds great. That doesn't mean that's the only thing you can say, but they have a bunch of them like that in acapella that you might want, but that they can also synthesize your voice from. This is great. Now, when is this available? Did they say?
Next OS revision.
This is 16, or is this 15 point whatever?
No, I think it's 6. I think it's going to be 16.
Okay.
Later this year or something. Later this year is what they say, but yeah, it's probably September.
Yeah, it's the next iOS, in other words.
Another feature. So my friend Shelly Brisbane, who has low vision, wrote about this story on Six Colors, and she's really, she pointed out something that's a very cool idea. They've got this door detection, any device with LiDAR, there's like door detection and person detection. And they've added this new feature as a part of this wave that's called point and speak. And the way she described it is, if you're a low vision or blind person standing at a vending machine, it won't just tell you that it's a vending machine. If you hold the phone up and put your finger on a button, it'll say that's the Coke. And the next one, it'll say that's Pepsi. So that it'll actually read, or a microwave, it'll be like, that's the power button, that's the one. So it'll actually tell you what button your finger is hovering over, so that you can control like a button interface in the real world. If you're blind or low vision. Just another, right? Like they're just building more of this stuff on top. And you can imagine how it unlocks possibilities that weren't there before. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Shelley also mentions in that article at sixcolors.com that made for iPhone hearing aids are coming later this year. This is something Apple, I expected Apple to kind of jump on with the advent of over-the-counter hearing aids. I was at the audiologist the other day. He said, well, this is the latest. He showed me a pair from Starkey. And I guess said, try this for a week. And I did. And it was improved. $6,000, please. And so I said, I'm gonna wait and see what else comes along. Because this would probably be a bad time to buy traditional hearing aids, I would think. There's something about to happen.
Feels like
This was like an innovation inflection point.
Yeah, there were some MFI hearing aids before, but they're the Mac didn't support it. So now it's going to be on the Mac.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
Fall.
Yeah, I have Resounds, which are MFI. And so there's a list on the Apple website. I get it. So it's not
it does feel
it's always
like
worked with my iPhone. For instance, it's a little weird I can answer calls and just kind of talk like this. And people say, well, how are you hearing this? Well, it's coming through my ears, my hearing aid. So there are quite a few manufacturers that are making those for the iOS platform. But yeah, Mac, that'll be nice. Sure. I listen to audio on my Mac. Yeah.
And it does feel like we are on the precipice.
I think
of
OTC
revolutions in terms of over-the-counter, computer hearing aid / headphone / whatever, right? Like for not just people who need hearing aids, but for everybody to hear better and different in different situations, right?
I think augmented hearing at a persistent augmented hearing, I think, is just on its way. They're going to
for everybody, not just us hard of hearing types.
You decide when you want to hear, when you don't want to hear, what you're listening to in the background. I think that there's going to be a point where we just put things. A lot of people just put things on their ears, and they filter the world as they want to.
Well, the fact that everybody's wearing AirPods these days makes it more socially acceptable too. There's a real resistance. I get a lot of stuff from my audiologist when I visited. He said only 1 in 5 people who need hearing aids wear them because of the stigma, right?
Yeah.
Well, and the problem if you don't wear them is cognitive decline.
Yeah,
the universe starts to get dialed out. And there is a direct correlation between not wearing hearing aids and cognitive decline, which explains a lot for me personally.
And speaking of stigma, like some of these technologies actually are enhanced by the use of a camera. Like a lot of the technologies that Google is putting out with. It can focus in on individual speakers because it's matching sounds to lip movements that it sees. So we could find ourselves in a bit of a pickle soon where here is an adaptive technology that a segment of the population almost absolutely needs in order to in order to be able to hold a conversation in the general world. But you have to be okay with the fact that you have to not freak out by the fact that there is a camera that's pointed at you while this person is using this technology.
Right.
And if it's a company like Google that's doing it, oh boy, do they have to contortionize themselves to say, here are all the reasons why there's no possible way we can get access to what's the camera. It's all being done on device. We turn it all into German so that even we can understand it. All this sort of stuff. I mean, there's so much adaptation that society has to make with every piece of technology. And a lot of it is just deciding what abstract fear is now important enough that it's worth.
We're going to be cyborgs. Let's face it. Remember the MIT guy? What was his name that walked around and he had like
Dr. Mann. Yeah.
Dr. Mann. He had all this stuff around him and everybody thought, yeah, that's cute. But I think that I mean, it won't look so clumsy, but that's coming. And I think just the fact that so many people wear AirPods, you don't know if they're just listening to music or they're using it for augmented hearing.
I mean, the thing that I wear the most is the OpenCom. OpenCom.
I love that OpenCom. I bought that because of
bone
you.
conduction.
Yeah.
And I have them on a lot when I'm not.
Yeah, Lisa does too. She's got her aftershocks on all the time.
Because I can hear everything, and I'm just doing my thing, and I put my little headset back, and it turns off, and so then but if someone calls, I just swing it down and start talking, and it's but I listen to stuff. I listen to a lot of audiobooks on it, and it's just great to have. But it doesn't. What's interesting about it is it doesn't feel like I'm cutting the whole world out. It's just it's just this other thing that's going on while I'm doing my thing.
Well, enjoy Accessibility Day. It's probably something we should all be looking into, since, as you said, Jason, we're all headed that way, one way or the other.
Just because of the timing, we're going to do. We're office hours is going to do accessibility for 7 weeks over the summer.
Oh, good.
So every Saturday we're going to take in our education day. The educators take the summer off, and so we're going to turn that into Accessibility Day or Accessibility Saturdays for starting in mid-June.
It's actually May 18th is Global Accessibility Awareness Day, or GAD. And if you go to accessibility.day, you can see.
So today is just global Apple press releases come out on Tuesday's day.
Yes, that's right.
It is the best day, though. Tuesday is the best day. Like it
is from my point of view. It gives us a show.
It's the best day. Because someone asked me, like, why does everyone put out things on Tuesday? I'm like, it gives you a day to prep it on, so you don't have to work the weekend on Monday. And then otherwise it's maximum distribution across a week, the set of weekdays before you go to the weekend, and everyone forgets what you were talking about. But that's why it's all on Tuesday.
And this is one press release I would, read. It's apple.com/newsroom. Especially this detection mode that Shelley was talking about at 6 colors, because it's really an interesting use of all the technologies, not just the camera, but the camera, the LiDAR, as you said, Jason, the LiDAR scanner, on-device machine learning, to announce the text on each button as users move their fingers across it. What it gives you basically a voice interface to any device. Blind users are used to having screen readers, but this is like having a screen reader for anything you point your camera
reality,
at. For reality.
How about that?
I wonder if a headset, like a inside-out headset, would be, I know, could actually be useful for someone who's low sight, not using it as the headset, but they have it on their head and they're just looking around and pointing at things, because it's got cameras, it's got LiDAR, it's got all those things. What
are the odds Apple mentions this when they release the VR headset, which has cameras pointing out, by the way?
Solid 50-50. Solid.
They're going to be throwing a lot of darts in the vague direction of wherever the dart.
And it'll do this, and in this. Glenn Fleischman and I have a little bit of a bet going on Mastodon on twit.social, because Glenn says this isn't going to be for sale. They're going to talk about it, but they're going to maybe do a lending program, but this isn't going to be for sale. And he says if it is, it won't be till later this year, which is probably accurate.
Right.
But I think Apple, but his contention essentially is they would never release anything this clunky. And my contention is, maybe the design team didn't want them to, but they were overruled. Yeah. That's what seems to be the rumors.
We're getting reports from the parts chain, basically saying that an immense number of components that would support millions of these headsets is being basically moved to Apple. So
I think they're making them. Yeah, I think so.
I don't think they're hoping for they think an iPhone-like success is possible, but I do think it's more than, hey, we're going to make 100,000 basically at cost to make sure that we put them in the hands of the developers and the forward thinkers who absolutely need to have a head start. It's like, no, there are a lot of people who will give us $2,000 to $3,000 for one of these, and we're going to make a couple of million for those people who will give us $2,000 to $3,000 for them.
There was a Wall Street Journal report, which I don't know, my sort of Apple plant bell rang there where I'm like, where it feels like, because I think Apple does sometimes go to the journal and has historically, but whether it's an Apple initiated thing or not, it felt very much like doing the work that Apple wants people to do right now, which is set the bar where it is, right? Don't get excited. It's going to be very expensive. There aren't going to be very many units. Just trying to manage expectations, because what they don't want is to have that day arrive in June and have them unveil this thing and have everybody in the world be like super disappointed because it's not what they expected. And when you put a story in the Wall Street Journal that details low sales expectations for the first round and a high price and all of that, it feels very much like that's exactly the story Apple wants everybody to know going in, so they don't think, because they're already going to think it's the next iPhone, right? And they're like, no. Calm it down. This is the first step in a much longer journey. Because this is because I disagree with Leo's pessimism about the long term here, I think. But the truth is, this product, by all accounts, there's no way that it's going to be the hit that blows people away. Yeah. It really, at most, it's going to be step one on a much longer journey. I think their best to hope for, in fact, is for everybody to be totally blown away with the technology and say, well, this is great, but it needs to cost a third as much for us to use it.
And the watch was a pretty expensive watch when it came out, and it was a pretty niche market that was starting it, and then it was now that's what you see everywhere.
Yeah, this is going to be like that, but more extreme, right? They're not going to sell as many of these as they sold watches in year one, right?
No,
go ahead.
So Palmer Luckey, the guy who created Oculus Rift, sold it to Facebook and then went off the deep end, but that's another story. Tweeted a couple of days ago, the Apple headset is so good.
I'm a little into like, why would they show it to Palmer Luckey? Like, I don't know.
Last guy you would show it to, right? But maybe
I just don't.
And then Jason Calacanis goes on Twitter saying, if anybody has one, I will gladly give you something. I can't remember.
Oh boy.
I will gladly pay you Tuesday for an Apple headset today. How would Palmer Luckey know? You think this is just him trying to pretend he's
I think so.
such?
If you've seen a headset, there is no way in hell you're talking about it.
Yeah.
I've seen all I'm saying is that I think most of the people in this conversation have had hardware early. And even on simple things that are just, hey, here's the next version of something we've been making for 5 years, the amount the amount of arm twisting they put you under to make sure you understand exactly when you're allowed to say anything about this and what the definition of anything is. If anybody has seen something that Apple's not shipped yet, and they're talking anything about it, there's an easier way to make sure that Apple never talks to you ever again. You can just simply not answer the phone. Okay.
Here's Glenn Fleischman's toot. Apple rarely ships inelegant products. Everything leaked makes it sound ridiculous. So if all the rumors are wrong, the actual thing has to be legendary. And I think it defies some of the laws of physics, hence my disbelief. So my personal disbelief, which obviously, Jason, you have your right to your wrong opinion, but my personal disbelief is this category is already dead. That like Meta has already moved on. The whole thing is dead.
Possible. It's certainly possible.
And Apple is late to the party, and it turns out everybody left already.
Certainly possible.
I can just say from having headsets that aren't publicly available that when it works, it really works.
Yeah.
Like it's so the thing is that it's at once you crest over about 96 frames a second and about 6K per eye, you get into a different world that is pretty slick.
I will bet you a HelloFresh box that you are wrong.
I won't be able to get it for 5 years because that's how long it'll take for this to mature. So everybody sit back and let it roll over you. You're watching magic.
Actually, I'll send you a HelloFresh box just because you deserve to eat some delicious food. Flavor is in full bloom at our sponsor, HelloFresh. Enjoy the tastes of, this is so good, chef-crafted recipes featuring ripe seasonal ingredients delivered right to your door. This is not your grandfather's food box. This is the best. In fact, I just made, which one? Well, this looks good. I have this in the fridge. Creamy lemon herb pork chops. This is from our most recent box. Tuscan pork tenderloin, but this is the one I just made, which was pork sausage and bell pepper risotto made from scratch. It was so much fun. They give you every ingredient, no more, no less than you need, plus this nice recipe card. And you're learning, I think it's great because you're learning these great skills and, man, some great recipes. This May, HelloFresh is celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. For a limited time, authentic recipes created in partnership with Chef Serbi Sani of New York's Tagmo restaurant. This will be our next box. We already ordered this. Enjoy a cultural taste tour right in your own kitchen. I just love that. It's expanding your horizons. We got in a bad habit. I think we all did during the pandemic of takeout, right? Not good for you, fattening, and not as good as it could be. HelloFresh is, I think, the new takeout, right? Don't call for takeout. HelloFresh is quick and easy meals. Make feeding the family a cinch without that high price tag, because you really do pay. I mean, how often do you look at the takeout? The food costs less than the delivery. Their new fast and fresh options are ready in just 15 minutes or less, and the quality is spectacular. The red bell peppers in our HelloFresh kit that I made this delicious risotto recipe with, I've never seen them so perfect, so beautiful, so sweet. They travel and it's because they travel from their farm to the home in less than 7 days. They are super fresh. They do more now than just delicious dinners. You could take your pick from 40 weekly recipes, but you can also choose from more than 100 items to round out your order, including snacks, easy lunches, desserts, pantry necessities. Every family needs this. It all comes in one box on the delivery day you choose. So you don't have to scour the grocery store for that one ingredient to complete the recipe. Everything you need is there, fresh, pre-proportioned. It cuts down on food waste and makes it really a snap. They're like your sous chef in the kitchen. They're there handing you one by one the ingredients so you could put this together. Oh, and if you're hosting a get-together, HelloFresh and HelloFresh Market makes dinner time a snap with deliciously easy options that will please everyone at your table. From fit and wholesome to pescatarian to veggie. It's always a problem. You're having a dinner party and one person says, oh, I'm a pescatarian. And you got to, well, HelloFresh makes that easy. They've got a meal plan for you. And whatever your lifestyle. Plus, you can easily swap out proteins and sides to your liking. Check Save Money off your growing to-do list with the help of HelloFresh. HelloFresh is cheaper than grocery shopping, 25% less than takeout, and it's so much better. Plus, the satisfaction of making it. The house smells amazing. Everybody sits at the table and you made it. It's just a great feeling. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/MacBreak16. We've got a great deal for you. Offer code MacBreak16 for 16 free meals. 16 free meals and free shipping. HelloFresh.com/MacBreak16. Please use that URL so you can take advantage of this. HelloFresh.com/MacBreak16. And then the offer code is MacBreak16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. It's delicious. You owe it to yourself. Just try this because it's wonderful. HelloFresh. Anyway, I'll send you a box if I'm wrong. I haven't been as committal in this as I feel like I ought to be. So before WWDC, I'm going to go out on a limb and say VR as demonstrated by Facebook's Oculus, demonstrated by the HTC Vive, which I think was better than the Oculus, is a dead as a doornail product category. Apple is not only late to the party, everybody's already left. I'm going to say that. I'm saying it. It's a recording. Make a mark, take it, put it somewhere, and then in 6 months you all can laugh at me. But I really feel strongly this is I haven't used that special thing you've used, but I've used the Magic Leap, Alex. I've used a lot of this stuff, and it's not the HoloLens, very underwhelmed.
Leo, that would be a much bolder statement had you not demonstrated that you have access to voice synthesis technology and that you can basically edit whatever it is.
Anthony, make sure you have a variety statements. Here, I'll give you another one. This is going to be the hottest product category since the iPhone. More? You need more? Apple had a good idea, but they fumbled in delivery.
I can't believe our state senator is a cockatoo.
there, that's a good one. Who knew that all this time Atari was developing the killer headset? There you have a few choices you can work with.
I just got my Intellivision Amico, and it's awesome.
Apple has snurfed up 90% of TSMC's 3-nanometer capacity for the year 2023. 90%. This is according to Digitimes. So sorry, everybody else. Holy cow. This is, of course, the process that the M3 will be based
is like,
on.
Who got that 10?
Yeah, right.
Exactly. How did who got fired at Apple because they left anything on the table?
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that we don't talk about, I think, enough, just in general, not us in particular, but in general, is Apple scale. Like, this is a game they've been playing for more than a decade now. Remember when they bought all the RAM at a set price for the next 3 years, and they bought all the capacity, and then everybody else is like, we need memory, and they're like, sorry, we sold it all to Apple for a price that's way lower than you would pay now anyway, because they ordered it in advance. This is Apple, like the scale of the iPhone, especially the money that Apple has to spend, the money they've got in the bank so that they can spend billions of dollars now for you to build that factory for the chip that they're designing that you're going to need to fab in 4 years, right? Like, all of this is I don't want to say it's the Tim Cook secret sauce, but it kind of is, right? Like, they have so much market power and so much money that they can define what's available and then take most of it for themselves. And it's one of the reasons that the Apple Silicon story is so powerful, is that they have that scale.
And another reason, it's another reason why Apple is so valuable in their culture, that they make plans, they can make long distance plans, and they know what they're going to go after, and then they can execute on those plans. It's not well, maybe we'll try this, or maybe we'll do this as an experiment. It's like, no, if they're the fact that they're doing VR goggles means that they know where it's going to be in 5 years and what they intend to ship in 5 years. The fact that they need to book all this, they can commit all of this money towards 3-nanometer manufacturing, means that they know exactly what the roadmap is, not just for this Apple Silicon, but the device is going to go into for the next several years. And that's not something that it's not unfair at all that they book this all out. They've got the money and they're making the commitment. Other companies, they just, for a lot of reasons, they don't have enough control over their market to be able to say, this is what we're going to be doing in 3 years. They can say, this is what we hope we're going to be able to be doing in 3 years. It depends on how the market responds to the next 2 years of stuff that we planned 3 years ago.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite sayings is from General Omar Bradley, that, amateurs talk about strategy and professionals talk about logistics, and Apple is a master of logistics.
Yep. That's what we see here. And Andy makes the point too. This has shifted into a higher gear now with Apple Silicon, because Apple designs their chips. So they know exactly. It used to be they took stuff off the shelf, right? Like they took an Intel part from here, and whatever Intel made it, they could choose what Intel part they wanted, but they were choosing based on Intel's choices about what goes into chip A and chip B and chip C. And now, not only, and they were privy to some of Intel's roadmap, right? But now it's like they make the roadmap, and not only do they know what the chip is going to be, but as Andy said, they know exactly what computers it's going to be in, right? Like they know that going in 3 years in advance.
And as you see all those chips slowly unify, where there's, we're coming together, where they're making the same type of chip, or this, and eventually maybe even the same chip, in some cases the same chip, across all of the platforms, it gives it just an entirely different scale than it had in the past.
So the iPhone, what is this? I'm getting, the numbers are all confusing. 14 Pro Max has the A15 chip. Is that right? I'm so confused.
Oh, don't do it to me.
I'm glad it's not just me. I thought I was having cognitive difficulties. Okay. The numbers are confusing. But the next generation.
The 14 Pro has the A16.
16. The 15 is in the 14 nothing. And so the next one, the 15, will have the 17. Which is the 17. Is the 17 a 3-nanometer? No, I know the 16 is not, right?
No, they're not. It's their enhanced 5-nanometer. Okay. It's not the real 3-nanometer process. This new wave is going to be the 3-nanometer process,
and that will be iPhone 15. this fall.
Running an A17 and iOS 18. Yeah, I know.
And then, but also, so Mark Gurman says, and I was really hoping, because there were rumors floating around, and I hate rumors, but there were rumors floating around that maybe this 15-inch MacBook Air that Apple is supposedly going to announce in a couple of weeks at the WWDC would have an M3. Now Gurman's saying, no, the first M3s may launch by the end of the year.
Yeah, he says that, although his story is peculiar because he's really just talking about notes about the configurations in an M3 Pro chip and then extrapolating. And I don't know if the M3 Pro can really be attached to the M3, right? Presumably the M3 will come earlier. So when he talks about the M3s at the end of the year, in a story where it's all about the M3 Pro being spotted by some third-party app developers, I'm not sure he actually means the M3 as a whole product line by the end of the year, or if he means the M3 Pro itself that he's writing about by the end of the year. And he leaves it kind of unclear himself, which Mark's a pro. I suspect that means that he's not sure, and he's not going to say anything, claim anything that he doesn't know for sure. So it may be the M3 could come sooner. Remember, the M2 MacBook Air came last summer, so an M3 MacBook Air and iMac in the fall is or 18 months later is not unreasonable. Yeah. But his detail here is about spotting an M3 Pro in the wild.
The company has begun. This is a quote from his Power On newsletter. The company has begun putting next-generation Macs with the M3 chips through their paces, testing them with third-party apps to ensure compatibility with its software ecosystem. That's pretty close to a release, I would imagine. Maybe not. He does double down on the fact that the 15-inch will have an M2 chip in it.
I do think it's interesting. The only news from the street that I've seen is that Costco is selling an enormous number of Studios and Mac Minis for very discounted prices.
Yeah, the discounts, and also M1s.
The M1 Mac, M1 Mac was selling for like $299 or something, $299 or $399 at Costco, and the Studio was selling, the base Studio or whatever was selling for $14.99, less than the Mac Mini Pro at Costco, and it just feels like the timing is odd. Given we're before WWDC, because it's not the kind of machine we're expecting, but it just does seem like they're dumping a lot of hardware out.
Yeah. It's not the same message, right? I would not be surprised if they announced that MacBook Air next Tuesday. I would not be surprised if they announced it in late June, right? Like it really
could be anything you want.
It could because it's a nice idea. I think it would sell really well, but is it part of the message of WWDC? It is not, right? Like, it's not that same message. So you could give it its own little stage some other time. So maybe they will. I mean,
do we expect they'll have announcements every Tuesday from now till WWDC? We're going to hear some little tidbits. This is all the stuff. Be surprised. Yeah. So there's 3 weeks
in rehearsal. They're probably in rehearsal going, let's cut that out. And then it comes a Tuesday.
They're refining it now.
Let's make that a Tuesday.
Yeah. Release. So the 22nd and the 29th, some stuff will leak out. And then June 5th, of course, is WWDC. That's a Monday, which is unusual, isn't it? Normally they do?
No, not for WWDC.
Not for
That's
WWDC. That's normally Monday through Friday. Okay. So Monday, June 5th, we will, of course, cover the keynote because there'll be a lot of interest in what Apple does announce.
Whatever it is.
Do you guys want to do predictions or do you care? It's kind of silly to do predictions, I guess. But I'm saving up my pennies for something. I have an M2, 13-inch M2 MacBook Air. I'm very happy with 14-inch, I guess. But I wouldn't mind a 15. What is it? Is 12, 13, 14? I can't.
I'll make a prediction, which is that they won't announce any hardware that's shipping anytime soon.
Oh, okay.
And that the only hardware there that I would expect to see would be maybe a Mac Pro announcement that it's coming, like later, much later, and the headset. And I think otherwise they're going to be talking, because traditionally it's an OS event, right? It's all about resetting the OS platforms.
Plus, we expect them to be really pushing the VR headset. They want to have a lot of space for that, I presume.
Yeah.
And what is it? XR OS? What is the OS?
Reality OS or XR OS, but since it is an operating system showcase, it will be interesting to see how detailed they get about the hardware if they unveil it, because they may be a little bit vaguer than they
Yeah.
might be if it was shipping, because they're going to be talking about it in a context of getting developers excited about developing for it as a platform. So it's almost like it's hardware inside a software platform as an announcement, and then whenever they get closer to shipping, like they did with the Apple Watch, they will reiterate maybe at the iPhone event what the hardware details are, and they might not even give a price out in June, right? Because it's not time yet. It's not going to ship anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that I'd be surprised if they show any hardware other than the headset, and I'd also be surprised if they show much of anything other than AR and VR. I think that the whole keynote this is their big coming out party. Like they're going to be showing this at scale. And they've been working on this for probably 5 or 6 or 8 years. Yeah. So I think that it's so I think that this is going to be a I don't think they want anything to be a distraction. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple more releases coming out before then, just dumping things into the system that they can kind of mention. But I also think that we may see the Office tools, start to support USDZ. I think people noticed in the screen captures in Final Cut that there was another tab that said models. That were in the tab. So so those are the kind of things.
3D models, not in
yeah. 3D models. Yeah. So I think that I think I would be we'll see, but I'd be surprised if we see if it's not at least, if not half, 75 to 80% AR in the keynote.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that the other big thing they're going to be talking about is going to be more refinements to the iPad to bring it up to the level of $1,000 computer, which is pretty much what they're selling these things for these days. I'd love to see them also talk about refinements to Stage Manager, which if we hear nothing about Stage Manager, I would then be concerned for the future development of that feature. I would not be suspicious at all if at the very beginning they thought, okay, we got Stage Manager, we love it here inside the spaceship. Now we got to cross our fingers and see how the people react to it, and we will pay close attention to what they say, positive and negatively, and that will help us actually get this where it needs to be within the next 2 or 3 years. So if they say, hey, our customers love Stage Manager, and now we're happy to announce we're making it even better. I hope that if we don't see refinements to Stage Manager, that would augur poorly for the feature, I think.
There have been some reports that's in the works, and I've also heard sort of through the grapevine that it seems like the Stage Manager team sort of never stopped working on Stage Manager. If you've noticed, every iOS revision that comes out has Stage Manager updates in it. Like they keep tweaking it. Sometimes it's frustrating. You're like, okay, now I know how Stage Manager works. And they're like, no, it works different now. But I think I think they've just kept on the treadmill there. And I'm with you, Andy. So much of what Apple does, you just want them to not ship it and walk away. Because that's a bad habit that Apple got into and they need to get out of, which is, shipping is the start of the story and not the end of it. And Apple a lot of times was like, look, we gave you a thing, goodbye. And it's like, but it doesn't work and there's a bug, and then they're like, nope, see you later. So I hope Stage Manager just keeps improving because it needs it, right? And they need to not walk away from it. That would be delusional.
Yeah.
I'll be really interested to see also with the I think we talked about this last week, but the logic in Final Cut as to whether they use the iPad as a development tool. So the iPad's great because you can pick it up, you have AR, potentially VR, you can move it around and simulate what you'd have in the headset. So if you were developing something in Final Cut or Logic and being surround sound, you could simulate a lot of that stuff inside of your iPad, and it feels like the timing of when they release the Final Cut and Logic could be kind of like, you already know that it's out, shipping starting next week, but here's how you use it as a development tool for the AR experience.
Speaking of that, it's an interesting question about, remember that when the iPad was released, they allow Xcode could simulate an iPad so you can target it as a developer without ever having been seeded with one. You think that there's going to be some sort of simulator so that developers can at least try to start to get a handle on what it would be like to target apps and code for that device. I don't know how necessarily it would work, but it seems like it's too easy an opportunity.
You can make it out of cardboard.
Yeah.
That was great. I thought I love
Google killed that one. Yeah,
I know, but it was so good.
I feel like Stage Manager is akin to Microsoft's release of Windows 8, where they attempted.
Not Clippy?
No, Windows 8 was an attempt to add touch to Windows. It was widely reviled by users. They hated it. And in the long run, what Microsoft did is just kind of like Homer Simpson fading into the ivy. They just faded it back into the...
Poochie went back to his home planet.
Yeah, but it's still all there. It's just kind of recessed into the operating system. I bet you that's what Apple does with Stage Manager. It was too forefront. It's too different. I'm surprised. Do you still use it, Jason? I guess you feel like you have to cover it.
I mean, I turned it off on the Mac as soon as I was done with my review. On the iPad, I do use it sometimes because there's some contexts in which the iPad is better with it on. But the truth is, I don't use Stage Manager on my iPad as the default. Yeah. It's off by default.
I think
and occasionally I'll be like, now I'll turn it on.
I guess what I'm saying is there's good ideas there, and I understand what they're trying to do, and it's kind of what Andy's talking about, which is to make the iPad more useful as a computing platform. But it's failed, I think, in terms of its affordances and its usability. So I think what they're going to do is what Microsoft did, which is fade into the ivy, but get rid of some of those affordances, but keep some of the underlying functionality.
Yeah. I just think it was kind of too big of a swing, because if there was ever a type of computer that justified and kind of celebrates a tiled window interface, it really is the iPad. I don't have to worry about moving something out of the way because I've just created a new workspace or created a new project, and now something's covering up an essential part of another window. I really do like the fact that I can just pick up an app window, slide it in, and suddenly I've got two equal panes, or I've got a 2/3, 1/3 sort of layout. I really wouldn't mind if Apple decided to go another step further from there and basically let me split vertical panes to have a top and a bottom, or to have three in one screen. Obviously, you can go nuts with that, and there's a hard limit, but the fact of the matter is, I'm like Jason. I'm the only times I use Stage Manager are when I really am. This really is the only alternative I have available to me to get a certain project done. Like again, I'm in Boston for the entire day. The only machine I brought with me was my iPad Pro and the keyboard cover. And it turns out that there's something a little bit more complicated than I anticipated. And then I will reactivate Stage Manager just so I can have more windows of more things, exactly, from more disparate apps at the same time. I just wish that it were so nice that just like Slide Over and those other basic features they added a couple of years ago, it became part of how I use my iPad, and it just isn't, unfortunately.
I don't think they're done with it. I don't think they've given up on it yet. And I do think we'll know, like with the touch bar, I think we'll know when they've given up on it, but I don't think they have yet. Also, there are some rumblings that Stage Manager, the reason we look at Stage Manager on the Mac and the iPad and are like, well, that's kind of weird, but okay, is that Stage Manager is also the metaphor they're using on the headset. And so I don't know, like they may be really motivated. Boy, that's just going to make Leo like the Stage Manager stuff even worse if it's all about the VR headset too. But like I think like Andy said, I think it's worth another crack, because I think they took a big swing and they didn't quite get it, but they've put in a lot of work, and they haven't, even during this cycle, they haven't given up. And I think there's some advantages to it. Also, I don't know what you guys talked about last week, but I looked at the Final Cut Pro running on the iPad, and my immediate thought was, oh, you need a bigger iPad now. And if you have a bigger iPad, or you have an iPad on an external display, and there are some rumors out there that you might be able to even do that and run it lid closed, which would be really nice, and attach it to a big display. Once you get in situations like that, you got to have Stage Manager, and it needs to work better. But like they just need They need to take some more shots at it, because this ain't it, right? Like it's not quite there.
Time for the lunch tray iPad.
I think Jason has some spare CPU cycles, because while he's having this conversation here, there's also an excellent conversation going on in the Club Twit Discord.
Members get more,
Pro.
Leo.
Members get more, and I don't want it to slide by the wayside, because it's actually a very good conversation. Your position on the MacBook Pro, the Mac Pro. Well, Knox Harrington started it off by saying, I find myself wondering how the Mac Pro works with the all-in-one nature of silicon, Apple Silicon. It's not expandable. And then you reply, it's a real head-scratcher. Mac Pro needs are kind of antithetical to the entire premise of Apple Silicon, to which Dragon Slayer throws in, they're going to have to drop Apple Silicon. That closed architecture will be a limitation, which I disagree with. But it is a conundrum. It is a head scratcher. Where does Apple go with the Mac Pro?
I think part of the premise there too is that, like, when you really think about it, what devices does Apple sell? Almost every device Apple sells is a mobile device. It's an iPhone, it's an iPad, or it's a MacBook. 3/4 of the Macs that are sold are MacBooks, right? Like, at least, if not more. Last time they reported that, they were in the 3/4 range. So almost every, so the Apple Silicon strategy makes sense for Apple's product line as a whole. When you start talking about high-end pro hardware, that's where you're like, like all of everything that works for the bulk of Apple's business doesn't quite do it. So the question, and the truth is, you're like, well, they can just make a variation. It's like, do you take your chip team? Do you take your entire philosophy that the chip team excels at and then say, for this little tiny product that is very important to certain users but sells nothing in the grand scheme of things, let's fork our chip strategy or change our chip strategy? Maybe they do, right? Like, maybe they do, but that's a hard, I'm glad I'm not making that decision, because I think that there's a real strong argument that above a certain point, Apple just won't go. And that if you can't take the, M whatever Ultra, that level of performance, if you need more than that, Apple doesn't have a platform for you, because the alternative is they will have to build this parallel universe chip platform for Apple Silicon on just the Mac Pro.
Yeah, but you weren't here last week. You weren't here last week, but we had this almost identical conversation when we were talking about Final Cut Pro for the iPad. And Alex, you made, I think, what was the absolute definitive point, which is that Apple is going to well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but my sense of it, or my feeling, is Apple will abandon that pro market in favor of the creator market, and that's what they've done with Final Cut. Am I misstating your point?
No, 100%. I think that Apple has lost. They've lost Hollywood. Like, they're not going to get that back. I mean, it's mostly locked up in Avid. And there's some Premiere in between that, and the only thing that's really taking ground is Resolve. And they're not people. Traditional editors are not going towards Final Cut, but in the creator market and the educator market, Final Cut is a big deal, because they're not getting paid by the hour, and they want to get things done quickly. And they don't have to go through a colorist and have 10 editors working on it and all the other things that happen there. And so it just makes a lot of, makes a lot of sense for Apple to really focus on the market that makes sense, because editors are going to ask for a bunch of quirky little things that then they're not going to change anyway. They're going to tell you, this is what I need to switch from Avid, and then they're not going to change from Avid. And so there's no ROI for Apple there. But what I will say is that there is, the one thing I would distinguish is that I think that there's still a market for the Mac Pro, because right now we have nothing that lets us put cards in our computer other than the Intel one. So I think that just, they don't even have to make the Pro some kind of crazy beefy machine. It's just having an enclosure that I can put cards in would be really useful, because right now it's a really good business for Sonnet and OWC, because we're buying all these enclosures for all the cards that we need. So it just feels like they having something that lets you put 3, 4, 5, 6 cards in it, along with you put couple ultras in there at the same time. You do a bunch of other things there, and I think that you end up with and I do think that there's an aspirational benefit to Apple of people having the really beefed up machine. It's there's a reason to have an F1 machine that is pushing the outer envelope of what's possible, and I think that is still. I think it's still important to Apple, for people to have that scale, because there was a point where I was, very clear, before the M1 came out, I was pretty sure that my time using Mac as a professional platform was almost over. Like, it was just like, I'm buying more and more PCs and more Linux boxes, and I'm putting 4 GPUs in them, and I'm doing all this other stuff. And before the M1 came out, I figured, I got another 2 or 3 years. And then after that, my home computer, and I'll be answering email on a Mac, but everything else will be a PC or a Linux box. And, the M1 changed that, but I do think that you don't want people to think that I'm going to get to the end of the yellow brick road and just it's just going to end. There has to, I think that the existence of that high end machine that will do all the things that I may scale to, I think is pretty important to have, because I think it affects the intake on the other end as well. When you're buying into the machines, knowing that you can get there, I think is important.
I think the question is, how does Apple define that top end? Because I think you're right, Alex, but I suspect what we'll see is, what are the limits that you can do within the Apple Silicon paradigm, instead of it being, okay, we broke out the RAM and we broke, because that breaks sort of what Apple's trying to do.
Yeah,
right?
but I think that cards would be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe even like RAM, a cache and lots of storage with fast lanes, and but without, because I think some people really expect that it's going to look like a traditional computer, like the Intel Mac Pro. And I think you're right on, which is it will have capacity and all of that, but it will otherwise look a lot like that high-end Mac Studio. It's going to be as much performance as you could possibly get out of an Apple Silicon paradigm, plus all the stuff around it. Not, we broke Apple Silicon just for you, Mac Pro.
No, I don't think they should do that. And
I don't think they're going to do it. Yeah,
we're going to add some extensibility. We're going to have a ton of I/O. We're going to have a ton of we're going to have I don't know, 6 or 4 or 6 or 8 lanes of Thunderbolt, that are going through it. We're going to have a bunch of cards,
right?
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be a $60,000 machine. I think it can be a $20,000 machine or a $15,000 machine. But I do think a lot of lanes that you can do stuff with. I think that it helps show off the chips as well. But I definitely agree with you that I don't think that they need to break anything. I don't think there's no reason to break that stuff out. I think that if anything, I would take 2 ultra, I don't know pancakes that have all those things and stick them in there, or have up to 4 of them. You could put 4 of them in, run them all parallel, and let them do a bunch of things. I mean, that would be interesting.
Yeah, for me, the thing that kind of pushed my belief system about Apple's attitudes towards the Pro market was during the earnings call, the Q&A, when I think it was the first time I'd heard Tim Cook say explicitly the phrase that we're primarily a consumer company, not a pro company. And so that kind of Jason might have some other thoughts about this, but again, I can't remember a time when those words specific, hey, we are a consumer oriented company. And then the implication being that, and of course we build enough powerful stuff that we can make a top end creator or research level Mac. But essentially when you come to the classic form factor of a Mac, essentially the hot plate form factor is where the most powerful Macs we intend to make. And we're not intending to make big boxes with slots in them that cost upwards of $12,000 as a base.
And what a Pro has changed over time. Right. What Pro markets, like Alex said, some Pro markets are gone, and that's okay, because there are other markets. Like Apple now talks, Apple's number 1 Pro market is people making iPhone apps, right? That's their number 1 Pro market. It's developers,
right? And
then there are lots of other professional level people, and the power of the Apple Silicon platform for Mac users at the high end is actually very impressive. But like the markets change and your targets change. And I over the years, I have written a lot of stories about very angry people who are understandably angry that Apple has decided, or the market has decided for Apple, that their personal area is not going to be a place where Apple is particularly strong. And they get really irate about it. And it's like, I understand why they're irate, but that does happen. Sometimes markets change, and Apple will be like, if that's what's required to hold on to that market, we're just not going to do it. And nobody wants to hear that they're abandoning your market.
Apple kind of said that when they dropped computer from the company name. They kind of acknowledged that what we really are is a consumer electronics company.
Yeah.
And I think that if you think of them
bigger.
that way, that's a really good niche. They're almost a $3 trillion company.
And $62 billion in cash and negotiable securities on hand.
And they don't have to do everything. In fact, that I think is a very important thing that Steve Jobs taught them, is you should say no to most things. And I don't have a problem with that. I understand how, if you're a Mac lover, you want to do that. But there's PCs. You can do anything you want with PCs, and you can put Linux on them if you want, and the sky's the limit. So it's still out there.
My only regret was that I didn't buy as big a studio as I would have bought You know, like I
Right.
don't really need the Mac Pro, but I was going to get one. I was like,
Right.
I'm going to save money and
You're
get
holding
one.
off. Yeah.
And so I held back, and then nothing happened.
but
Otherwise,
honestly,
I would have bought a bigger machine.
Even with
So
your
that's what
photogrammetry, probably the Mac Studio you got is probably pretty sufficient. Yes?
Oh, I can thump it. I can still thump it. You know, so I could use more. I mean, the Ultra with some more RAM would have done better. You know, like it definitely, and it's probably somewhere in my future. If Apple definitively says we're not going to get a Mac, we're not going to do a Mac Pro, I'd probably be in the market for the M3.
Yeah, wait and see the M3, the M3 Ultra. Because the M3, 3 nanometers, there's a lot. I think it's credible to believe that the M1 and M2 were not so different, but the M1, M2 jump to M3 is going to be significant. And that is really going to be the one you want anyway.
Yeah, quite possibly. And so I do think that Apple's going down the right path. I mean, the creator market, the education market, the corporate market, all of those markets are far bigger. In fact, I think their biggest problem is not so much, and they do a pretty good job of it, but it's not so much the hardware or the software. It's just the wetware. I think Apple could lean a lot harder into training to make sure that people are taking full advantage of it. Because I think that, you know, they do some training there, but I think that they could spend a lot more money there to make sure that people are actually using their products at the full capacity.
Do they have to? Clearly, what Apple is doing now is looking for the next 10 pole. Do they have to look at cars? Do they have to look at VR? Do they have to look at health? Do they have to look for a new 10 pole? Or could they just say, hey, we're doing great?
I think it's risky. You know, you can, you know, like the, Nokia and BlackBerry. And there's that whole movie. I just watched the trailer for that BlackBerry movie. It's really good.
Yeah.
You know, you can get into a vertical, you know, or a couple of verticals and think that you own the world, and then suddenly it's gone. You know,
that's clearly what they're worried about.
I think Apple worries about 1997 every day. Like I think that they think about it all the time. You know, it's and I think that the so I think that they could do a lot of things. I mean, I look at lots of products in my house going, I really wish Apple would just build one of these so that I didn't have to.
It's tough because
I'm just not happy with it.
You do want to also not spread yourself too thin. You do want
exactly. You don't want to, but when you're that big, you're like, can't you just hire 100 engineers to build?
I don't think you've said this before. It's not that easy, is it? They're not out
It isn't
there.
easy, but as Andy has said before, but you have the money. You
have the money, but it's
harder now because they're trying to get everybody to come back. They're trying to get everybody to show up, and they keep on losing people because they have to come to work. So
one other thing Gurman talks about, I think it's very interesting, is the pending war between Apple and Meta. He uses as his sole data point the fact that Meta is pulling the Messenger app from the Apple Watch.
It's pretty
and then launches WhatsApp for Wear OS. And does not say whether WhatsApp will come to Apple Watch OS, but he is pointing out one thing that is perhaps reasonable, which is Meta wants to own the mixed reality headset market, and Apple's coming on strong, presumably, in that market.
Yeah, but even there, isn't it? If Apple comes in and succeeds, isn't that a validation of their focus on that market?
Well, and there's also, add one more data point. Meta hates ATT, the app tracking, and they claim it costs them billions.
This feels like one of the flimsier marker. I mean, this is low down in his newsletter, right? Like it's not.
I like it though.
I love him. He does great work, but this one, I'm like, can we connect those data points and be like, oh no, they took this watch app away and they're adding this watch app on Wear OS, and therefore this means war. And I'm like, except if there are places where Meta
never put Instagram on the iPad. I mean, it's true.
It's true. And I do think, it's a little like talking about Sherlocking. It's like Sherlocking is not Apple comes in and your product is dead. It's actually, it can be an opportunity because Apple very rarely does everything that's in those apps. This is a little like that too, which is like, I know it's scary. I know I'm basically saying welcome Apple seriously to VR, right? But that, it kind of like Mark Zuckerberg has spent so much money trying to validate this. If Apple comes in and has a product that people are like, whoa, maybe this is the future, that's good for Meta in the sense that it will show that they did not throw all that money away. Now, if Apple throws its money away, then maybe Meta says, see, it wasn't just us, and then they run away. Well, I don't know.
The thing that will hurt is if Apple comes in at $3,000 and sells more units than Meta sold, at $1,500 or $300, like that'll be brutal because it's so much work to get these headsets down into the down into a consumer level cost, there is so much going on in the headsets that I think $3,000 is completely reasonable if you have a high performance headset. It's kind of, to be honest with you, miraculous. $3,000 is a miraculous number for a headset, to do what is, if it's high performance. And we haven't seen high performance yet because everyone's trying to fit into $300 or $600 or $1,500. And that's not miraculous. That's impossible, and so I think that, it's going to be really hard for Meta if Apple pushes really big numbers of, and when I say really big numbers, just more than Meta, in the same category at twice or in some cases 6 times the cost.
Yeah, I should just a little bit of history in case you were wondering what Jason was talking about. In 1981, when IBM entered the PC industry, Apple Steve Jobs famously bought a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal saying, "Welcome, IBM. Seriously, welcome to the most exciting and important marketplace since the computer revolution began 35 years ago." And of course, the PC and PC compatibles almost immediately ate Apple's lunch. So it's something like mission accomplished. It's just one of those things you never forget.
It's not.
All I'm saying is that I hope that Meta doesn't decide to make a cardboard Apple headset and roll it out in a coffin. That didn't work out for Microsoft.
Microsoft did that for the iPhone, right? They had a mock funeral for the iPhone. Was it the iPhone?
Yeah.
Foolish.
Hubris.
I still have
hubris.
a Zune around somewhere. There's a Zune around somewhere in my.
No, hubris. The Greeks knew it, and it's been true ever since. Let's take a little break, and then we will talk about Apple TV Plus and a big executive departure. But first, I want to tell you about a tool we've been using, Miro. It's hard for me to describe what Miro is because it can be anything you want it to be. So here's the problem that almost every team, every group that's working on a project, whether it's your high school science project or you're developing the next great consumer product, you and your team are going from tab to tab, from tool to tool. And in that process, the context switches. This is natural. Ideas just go, whew, they disappear. Information goes, whew. With Miro, M-I-R-O, that doesn't have to happen because now you have a collaborative visual platform that everything goes into. All your great work goes in, no matter where you are, no matter what time zone team members are in, no matter what tools they use. In fact, we use, for instance, in our Miro board, we use Zapier and Google Docs, but the information gets put into one spot. I don't know how to describe this because it could be anything you want. It's completely plastic. It's completely, whether you're working from home in a hybrid workspace, it's something that everyone can use to collaborate, to brainstorm. Miro's infinite shared boards give product teams a perpetual space, a single source of truth. They just drag and drop insights and data imported from any tool. Nothing is lost. Nothing is forgotten. It's not a notebook. It's not a whiteboard. It's everything. It's more than both. It's a synergy. It covers a breadth of use cases so you can build. It's very visual, so you build visual assets. Text works great in Miro. You can present findings. You can run brainstorms with cross-functional teams. You can zoom in to get the detail. You could zoom out to get the overview. You can build out your product vision on a Miro board by brainstorming with sticky notes, with comments, with live reactions. There's a voting tool. I love the timer. So if you're on in a meeting or in a Zoom call, you can come to consensus quickly. You can express yourself, of course, in creative ways and bring the whole group together around one idea, whether it's a wireframe, you could draw with a pen tool. Forget napkins. You've got Miro. Putting images and mock-ups on the Miro board, kind of a dream board, a vision board. Miro users report saving up to 80 hours per user per year. That's like 2 weeks of vacation a year just by streamlining conversations and cutting down meetings. And don't we all want to do that? My strongest recommendation is you go to the Miroverse. When you go to Miro.com/podcast, you don't even have to log in. Although I'm going to tell you right now, you can create your first 3 boards free. So I would suggest you do that. Miro.com/podcast, create the account, get the 3 boards. Then go to the Miroverse because this is an amazing collection of things people have created with Miro, and it'll give you a much better idea of what you can do with Miro. A mind map, a retro, a SWOT analysis. What? A Harry Potter retrospective? That's from the UK government. Anything, right? It takes over from if you've been using Visio, other visual tools like that, it can do all of that. You can sketch with a pen. You can. So I can't really describe what Miro could be to you because I don't know, but you can find out if you go to Miro.com/podcast. Your first 3 boards are free. Here's something WebEx posted, a post-meeting summary after your WebEx meeting. Just some great stuff. Pitch decks, brainstorming. Miro.com/podcast. Your first 3 boards are free. Your team will always stay connected with real-time information. It gives project managers and product leads a bird's eye view of the whole project. Nothing slips through the cracks. It's so successful, they have more than 1 million monthly active users. That gives you some idea. It's a tool you will want to use. Get your first 3 boards for free. Start working better. Miro, Miro.com/podcast. Miro.com/podcast. We thank them so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly.
I could give a little testimonial for that.
Do you use
Miro's
it?
Amazing.
Yeah.
I built an app with WWT. From
Worldwide Tech, another sponsor of ours. Wow.
And they and we built an app together, and they built everything inside of Miro.
Yeah.
And so I spent days worth of time in Miro with them, thinking through the whole process and methodically laying out everything we're going to do and the timelines and all the bits and pieces and all the ideas and all the things that it has to do and all the bits and pieces. And it came out great.
Yeah.
but it's a testimony for both of them. But I was like, I don't even know how I don't know how we would have done it without Miro.
That's the challenge, right? When you have
that was the hard part. It was
working on an app together, like your ideas, and then the developers have to implement them. And that's the challenge.
They're asking questions, and then we're color coding things, and then we're tying things together, and we're grouping them over. Okay, this is the stuff that's good to have. This is the stuff that we have to have. This is but when you have a lot of times you say, oh, this is the stuff that's good to have, and then it just disappears. It rolls off the end. And and so it's somewhere on the board that you kind of keep a corral of that information. It was super, super powerful. Yeah.
You were not here when the 6 color charts came out last week with the Apple results. We used them though, Jason. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. One of the things that stood out was growth in services, right? This has been very profitable for Apple. Much of it's the App Store. But I wonder if Apple TV Plus is part of this. They're losing an executive in charge of TV Plus and sports. Pete
Not
Distad.
the creatives, though. It's the business guy at the top
who runs it.
It's actually, and it's interesting because they say that he's being basically he's got people who report to him. There's a guy who's in charge of sports, and then there's an open position that they've created. So it sort of almost sounds like he was in charge of. He was like a roll-up guy, and now they're just going to have a person in charge of sports and a person in charge of the business side of TV.
Because he came from Hulu 10 years ago. So
Makes
he
you
kind
wonder,
of helped build this, I guess.
Is there a lot of departures as noted in that report in the services area? I do wonder if there's like a Succession style intrigue going on around Eddie Q. Is Eddie Q planning on retiring and they're going to the mattresses and they're settling all debts, or is it really just the natural thing that happens at Apple, which is you work at Apple for a while, you make a lot of money, and then you go somewhere else? I don't know.
You collect your stock and then you go back to GM.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think things are changing at Apple. Maybe a little succession happening. Who else left? This is the 3rd major exit from Apple's services organization. Vice President Peter Stern and Michael Abbott. Stern ran services businesses and was Distad's boss. This does lend itself to that, does succession theory. Yeah. Abbott, meanwhile, oversaw Apple's cloud services group. Abbott's the guy who's going to GM to help them design their, good luck, GM, their Apple CarPlay replacement. Good luck, GM. So you think Eddie is retiring? What's the theory here you got?
I don't know. I just, when you see all that movement, you wonder, like, is something else going on there? I really don't want to start a rumor that Eddie Q is retiring or something. But I see this as like something's going on. And I don't know whether it's because it seems unlikely that all of these things are random. That this, I mean, it could be, but I'd say it's unlikely.
There's something going on there.
Yeah. And it may not involve somebody like Eddie leaving. It may be more like, Our services business now is not what it looked like 8 years ago. And it doesn't, like the sports and TV thing is a great example where they had the one guy in charge of sports and TV. And now they're going to have two people, the guy who's in charge of sports and somebody they're going to hire in charge of TV. And so it may be that too, which is just like, we're going to do a reorg. We're going to give people new responsibilities. Some people are going to take that as an opportunity to step off and, cash out, and other people get to step up, and it may simply be that, because that business really has changed enormously in the last decade.
Services now, as you point out, 20% of Apple's revenue, 1/5 of Apple's revenue. It's a big deal. Again, it's not TV necessarily, but TV's a part of it, and Apple has big ambitions with TV between Major League Baseball and soccer. And it is getting better. We were talking on Sunday. Amy Webb repeated the thing I've said before, which is something's missing from Apple's shows. Like, it's just a little too
it's a little too overproduced. Like,
they have too many notes.
So I mean, like, now I'm starting to enjoy. I mean, I'm starting. Severance.
There's some great shows. Severance was great. Slow Horses was amazing.
I'm really enjoying Silo. Like,
Silo. For me, the jury's out on that. We've only seen 3 episodes. I'm getting hooked.
I got hooked. Like, we got like.
Did you read the books?
It took us. No.
Yes, I haven't read the books.
I don't read fiction because then it would ruin the show.
That's right.
Like, so I don't want to know what I'm missing. I just want to enjoy the show as it is, and so that's why books exist.
My trick is just read books
out of them
that are unadaptable, and then you're fine. You can read those books. They'll never make a movie out of Watchmen, surely.
They don't have a Game of Thrones yet, do they? But then nobody does. Everybody's struggling to find that Game of Thrones.
I think Ted Lasso is the closest like big hit that they've had so far.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And to be fair, like, they've gone beyond. I have to say that my preconception of Apple TV was always that it's about the custom show. It's about their exclusive content, and they haven't been really doing much to build a catalog. But now they've got a couple TV shows that I've been meaning to catch up on. They got Marooned, which Gene Hackman, Gregory Peck, NASA astronauts being stranded in space, being rescued by the Ruskies in 1970. As Mystery Science Theater 3000 did a little.
Are they remaking it, or they have the actual Marooned?
No, they have it, and that's such an esoteric but cool movie that would get my attention, like, on any service.
Okay,
as opposed to look, another like true crime podcast turned into like a 5-episode streaming. Okay,
we are hearing that Severance has been hampered by the writers' strike. That they were working on it and they've had to stop. Well, some stuff's done, right? So
some stuff is done, but the problem is then some stuff says, "Oh, we're just going to go shoot." Well, the writers are part of that.
Kind of need writers.
Writers are part of they're sitting there they're rewriting it every day while they're on set. So it gets really complicated.
Like Apple
not
stuff
widely known.
I feel Apple stuff lacks edge a little bit. I don't know how to describe it.
I think it goes through one too many rounds of polish. Like to me, that's the problem with even with Silo, which I'm enjoying. It just feels like it went through one, it went through the polisher. There's just there's just a couple sharp edges that are missing somewhere there that it just goes through it. And it's beautiful. I mean, like I as a production person, I look at it and go, "Well, that was really expensive." Like that was a really nice car, and so, I still feel like everything I watch there just feels like it's one, they could afford one more round where, because we always say in production, you don't finish any project, you just run out of time. Like, you just submit what you had, and there's a certain edge to it. And it just feels like they did finish every project.
When it works, I'd say it works because I do sort of agree with you. There's a look and a feel to them. I think when it works is when it's either fantastical or dreamlike sort of intentionally. Yeah. So like Severance, I think works because it's so polished, it's uncanny. And that's what they're going for. And it's a good fit of material to style. I think For All Mankind, sometimes when it really works well, it's the same kind of thing where it is meant to be this sort of fantastical thing. I think maybe even Ted Lasso arguably is a golden glow of happy, it's not really realistic.
But then there's Schmigadoon, right? You can go too far in that direction as well.
I don't know. I kind of like Schmigadoon.
I like musicals.
I thought it was funny.
And I like the kind of offhand references to musicals, but Ghosted was god awful.
And Slow Horses is interesting because it's actually out of there. They have a UK production executive.
Yeah.
And so it's out of a different part of, right? And with a different sensibility in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Slow Horses was a very not Apple TV Plus. In fact, at first I looked at it, I said, oh, they bought this. They didn't make this. Yeah. But they did.
They hired a BBC executive to head off their Europe.
You know what was good? Tetris was pretty good. Did you like Tetris?
Tetris was really good. I really enjoyed Tetris.
I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's a very good movie, but I didn't care because I really enjoyed it.
Maybe that's why I liked it. You're right. Yeah, there were some structural issues with it. Luck, which should have been a huge success, fell on its face, even though they had Pixar's disgraced John Lasseter, helming it. Lasseter had the magic touch at Pixar, but maybe something happened.
He got fired
Apple.
Because he was.
Well, I know John pretty well. He was a hugger. He hugged me. Might have squeezed my buttocks. I don't remember. But I don't think it was personal. He was a hugger. That was his thing. So I'm going to, I don't know what happened.
I don't know him, but.
Yeah. I like John a lot. And he's very talented, but he couldn't make Luck a success, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Luck
even
was
Pixar's going through a slump, I think.
Yeah,
Luck was a success in the sense, like there's an argument to be made because somebody I do a podcast with, another podcast in a different place, Julia Alexander from Parent Research, she says that Luck actually did okay for Apple, like based on Apple's size of its audience and the fact that they want more children's and family-friendly programming, that Luck kind of did what it was intended to do. And Luck on Apple TV is never going to do the same kind of number that Luck on Amazon or on Netflix is going to do, but that it sort of like did its job. It did not break through and become a thing that everybody's signing up for Apple TV for, but that in the context of Apple's service, it did its job of providing that content. So it depends on, I think the challenge here is Apple really does want, what's the biggest that an Apple TV Plus show can be? Is it Ted Lasso? Is that as big as it will ever get?
Yeah.
And the
morning show was a flop, right? They put all their eggs in that basket, and big cast, big money, and flop. I noticed that the Will Smith vehicle, Emancipation, is no longer on their front page on their website. I'm thinking that was bad timing.
And the hard is you play really hard, like Foundation. I didn't even make it through.
And they've brought it back they've renewed it.
Well, they probably want it.
So you cannot watch a second season now.
Yeah, exactly. But even like that there's huge risk. I mean, I think that HBO kind of got into a mode where they figured this out, even though I don't know if they'll continue to figure that out. But they, they had a lot of things, that did well. But like with the One Ring from Amazon is,
Flopola.
It's okay.
Yeah.
They spent so much money on that.
Yeah. Just acquiring the rights. They spent like $250 million for the rights.
But they spent all the monies on that. And so I think that trying to, knock something out of the park, I think Apple needs to continue to do. I do think that I guess I'm finding myself watching it more often than I did before. Like that was because I kind of have a, if I see that there's a pile of shoulds somewhere in a, like, oh, this is going to be a big pile of shoulds, I won't watch it. Like if I see any should.
Well, they spent a lot of money on extrapolations, right? This is a very preachy climate change a show with big budget stars, including Meryl Streep, and big budget writing, and not so hot.
I just think I don't.
Preachy.
My problem is if I want to sit down and I want to relax, which is the only time I want to watch TV.
You don't want to see the end of the world. Yeah.
I just don't want any shoulds. Like I just want to watch a show and just have it be a show.
They should all over you. Yeah.
Yeah. They just, and so the thing is, and like 90% of Apple's stuff has been, should ridden.
Do not watch Ghosted.
And
it looks like it's going to be a great popcorn.
I did watch Ghosted.
What'd you think?
Horrible.
It was horrible. I didn't even finish it.
Here's the thing.
It's like the perfect popcorn movie. Great cast.
Here's the funny thing is my family enjoyed it, and of all people, my daughter enjoyed it, and she's not like that kind of she just thought it was fun. And but I was like I it gets into that whole thing I was talking about where it felt like every sharp edge had been worn off.
There was no,
and it was just like this. It was like the perfectly produced action film that had no soul, like just nothing
soulless,
that
completely
you cared
soulless.
about.
Yeah.
That and it was, it was like we put all the ingredients in, but there's just like, I don't know. There's
To be
there's
fair,
no carbon to it. No burn.
and you kind of said this. This is true across the board. Streaming networks are all kind of fumbling.
You just
Disney-
described a
Disney
Netflix
Plus is-
movie too.
right?
This
Should have been a
tanking.
Netflix movie, actually. Yeah.
At least it's properly compressed. I mean, like Netflix is.
It looks good on your 4K OLED. That's for sure.
I watched. What did I just watched the J-Lo vehicle. I just can't think of the name of it right now. The Mother. We watched that. I mean, it was a Saturday night. We figured we'd watch it.
It's Mother's Day. It's got J-Lo. What
Same
could
thing, kind of soulless, but it was okay. I mean, it was okay.
I'll tell you, here's
not
the
good.
hazard.
But it was horribly compressed. Like it was like,
Oh, that's funny.
it looks so bad. It looks so bad, and I was like,
Only you
Netflix-
noticed that,
so
by the way, Alex. I
Netflix
think.
compression falls apart on the Apple TV. It seems to be it literally seems to be what they're doing. There's something about the manifest that they're using inside the Apple TV, but on the Apple TV, I got a wired connection, a 1 gig connection. I got, there's no reason for this to be low quality, and it falls apart in the dark scenes. So if you see a movie like Gray Man or like The Mother, which are perhaps, a lot of dark scenes, you're just looking at like when my kids ask what is happening to the image, then I know that, we're now getting into the land of it's not working. So it's anyway.
The hazard of having a movie like Ghosted, which has so much promise and then falls on its face, is
so much money.
I feel less likely to try to sample an Apple TV show. Now I'm going to, by the way, because I'm an Apple One subscriber, I'm going to be getting this is, this comes along with the package, but I'm much less likely to sample. I'll look at something, I'll go, boy, that, Invasion. Now that looks interesting. And then it breaks my heart and I don't want to take another chance again. There's too much other stuff that you can watch out there.
Yeah, I just don't know of any streaming service that I've been exposed to where it really justifies a month-to-month subscription.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, I've got Netflix because that's my baseline. I don't know what I want to watch. Let's see what's available on X. But Hulu is mostly there so I can watch Bob's Burgers and Archer. Like basically Fox Network like animation without having to necessarily record it on my Plex server. And everything else is like Disney Plus. It's fine, but I'm gonna subscribe to it for a month. I'm gonna have like almost marked on the calendar. Here are the 5, 6, 7 things I want to watch in this month, and then as soon as I'm done, boom, cancel. Apple TV Plus. Once Ted Lasso is off after the 3rd season, again, I'm like you. I'm going to continue to subscribe to it because it's part of this package that kind of makes financial sense. But it's disappointing as a lifelong Apple fan to think that the only reason why I have this Apple product is because it's like keeping a fluorescent light fixture on. It costs less money to just have it, or my landline with my cable package is like I don't need it. I don't use it. I have nothing connected to it, but my package is cheaper if I have this. I don't have this thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that one of the big scary things for a lot of the streaming companies is that Apple and Amazon don't have to make money at it. Like they're playing a different, it's kind of,
we've talked about that. That's right.
And so that's the thing that as this gets more competitive, because I know that for me, like, now leaning like maybe I want to watch Paramount because the Picard thing looked really good, but I haven't, but like Paramount and Peacock came out too late. And I was like, I've already subscribed to too much content. Right. I don't want any more. And so, but if I buy another one, I'm going to get rid of one. And I think that now that people are starting to shift and figure out that I don't know if I need to keep on paying for all of these, Apple and Amazon are the ones that are most likely to just keep those subscribers because it's part of a larger package. It's kind of a Kaiser Soze model. They're always paying more than the job.
I don't care how much Max costs. I'm going to buy it for Succession. But I admit Succession only has 2 more episodes, and then I don't know. Then I don't know what happens after that.
It still just makes financial sense for me to if they make the mistake of making these series like available for purchase on iTunes or available for purchase on the Google Play Store or anywhere else, rather than subscribe. Once I find myself getting hooked on something, I will just buy an entire season.
Yeah,
and then I've got it. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah,
and you have patient, you have
to be patient. That's the problem.
Forever-ish. Yeah.
That's why I guess one of the reasons these networks are looking at sports, right? Because that's the kind of thing.
That's right.
That builds loyalty.
The big one.
Yeah.
Sports is the big one. It's the only thing that and not only do you sit there, you'll sit there through the ads because you're in a live experience.
You have to.
Yeah.
But
in fact, this was a big week for that because Peacock got an NFL playoff game exclusive to Peacock.
Oh
so
my
one of
God.
the NFL playoff games will be available, except in the home markets. A playoff game for the first time will be available only on streaming. Really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Wow. That's so dystopian.
That and Cocaine Bear, you got me. You had me. Yeah.
That seems like a way to educate the populace on how to pirate your content.
Exactly.
Honestly.
Wow.
I figured out how to get I was using my VPN to watch Eurovision because I was not going to subscribe to Paramount Plus just to watch Eurovision as totally worth it as it would have been. It's like if I can just select this pop-up menu in my VPN and pretend to be Irish on Saturday and get to see the final versus sign up for this channel that has only this one thing that I'm interested in. You know what? I'm going to do the paralegal thing. I'm going to hold my nose and pretend that God is looking the other way.
God's always watching you, Andy. I'm sorry.
God created Eurovision. Okay, that's the kind of God that I believe in. The God that created Eurovision. I think that he, she, or whatever would. Are
you happy with the outcome of this year's Eurovision?
It was bat-seating insane, and I loved every moment of it.
Okay,
I think to me, it's the pre-semifinal ones. It's the no spoilers, but there's only like my second year really paying attention.
I never watched it before. I knew about it because of ABBA and whatever 76. But I watched it this time, and it was like, oh. There's a video that I'll share to you like later on because it's this beautiful explanation of why Europeans love Eurovision, explained by a French lady. Because yes, it is extra. Yes, it is over the top. It is just an explosion of joy and happiness that gets us through another sunless summer. Really? Well, okay. I thought France was robbed personally, but it's a hell of a lot of entertainment, and there's no and because it's not American, they didn't try to make us care about anybody in this competition. That's probably why I enjoyed it so much.
It's not a buy-off.
So Deborah, you sacrificed a lot to be here at Eurovision. Yes, my grandmother, she sold her artificial hip.
Is that uniquely American? Is that the story there?
Oh my gosh,
Lisa watches both Idol and The Voice, right? The two big American singing competitions, and she skips all of that, tear-jerking drama
between.
She just wants to see the singing.
Not in the Olympics is like, I don't need to,
I should be in chemotherapy right now, but I think the spirit of music is going to kill my pancreatic cancer. You go, Gloria. You speak for all of us. Like, oh, for God's sake, she's not even a good singer.
By the way, you were mentioning Leo, have you seen for the ABBA thing, have you seen the Stockholm Syndrome on This Is Music on Netflix?
No. Is it about ABBA?
So This Is Music is one of the best series on Netflix, in my opinion. And it's all about, it has one whole episode on auto-tune and one whole episode on things that make, but one of them is, they call it the Stockholm Syndrome, and it shows how ABBA.
Oh, that's that factory. Yeah.
But ABBA first got, made it pop, suddenly made.
That's how Britney Spears was created. She went to Stockholm. And they produced the hell out of it.
But it showed out of them came all of these Swedish producers. And then out of that, and
Yep. Is this the story of Fire Saga on Netflix? Is this the one you're talking about? The backstory of
the Will Ferrell movie?
The Will Ferrell Will Ferrell at Eurovision? Is this what you're talking about?
No, I'm not.
This is, to me, this is exactly what Eurovision looked like, I thought. So, yeah.
Right. So, especially before the semifinals, the countries that are like, look, if we win this, we have to host it next year, and we don't want to do that. We are just going to be absolutely crazy and be fun and create such a wonderful show that nobody will think we're taking it seriously, and we will not be on the hook for this Eurovision.
The whole thing is all so pre-produced that the edit is automatic. Like the edit is pre-programmed, for the live show. So it's literally there's a software that I saw at IBC that just does the Eurovision edit for each one of these performances.
Because they know exactly when it begins and
They
ends.
rehearse it. All the camera operators know exactly where they need to be. The artists, rehearse it. They get it all. They figure it all out so that the edit. That's why the edit looks so clean and pre-edited. It's live, but it's basically pre-edited. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing use of technology.
The only thing that's live is the vocals. All the instruments have to be. Everything has to be less than 3 minutes, and all of the performances can only be vocal.
This is what I didn't like about it. It's like, where's the band? It's a recording.
The vocals are live for a lot of reasons. They're like, no, you can't have like an 80-piece orchestra that's playing for, I don't know. Again, I just put in the Discord a YouTuber
How
called
to Eurovision. Yeah.
And it will make you into a fan, just like it made me into a fan last year.
From Hazariel Costumes. How to Eurovision.
She is French, and she has a wonderful French accent, and she is very, very excited about Eurovision.
All right, I'm willing to get into it. I am. So apparently, I didn't know this. There have been significant outages. App Store, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, not showing on the system status page. Even this was yesterday. I hadn't experienced this, and this is not the first time this has happened. What's going on?
It's been happening kind of routinely. Like weather was down for a long time. Services are spotty. Even the Apple Card stuff is occasionally down. And there's an article 95 Map.
There's still an issue on weather, by the way, on the Apple. I'm looking at the Apple status page. There's still an issue on weather.
And so they have a rundown January 19th, February 20th, 23rd, April 1st, 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th, 15th, 24th, May 2nd, 5th, 9th, 11th, May 11th, Apple ID services currently down for many users, unable to log in or make payments. Apple Weather not working for some users, third time in this month. Apple Music down for some users, plus Apple Card and Apple Support. I mean, that's just, I agree with the headline in 95 Mac. It's just like these outages are at an unacceptable level. It basically shows that I'm glad Apple has put a lot of investment of their future into expanding their services business, but if they don't have it right, if services they've been running for years now are not rock solid, oh boy, they've got a lot of explaining to do.
All cloud services have outages once in a while, but this seems like an abnormal number. Alex, do you have any insight? I mean, you know about how this stuff works.
I think they're probably making a bunch of changes for WWDC. I think that's my guess is that they're updating a bunch of things, and they are I think that's
not an excuse though.
It's not an excuse. I'm just saying that I think that they're probably making some significant changes for WWDC.
And that's when these happen on every cloud service. We pushed a new configuration and it broke everything.
Hey, I'm sorry that you couldn't pay for dinner on Mother's Day because we had some server problems and we couldn't process your Apple Card. That sort of stuff is like, no, you're not my best friend, and I'm not encouraging you to pivot from a job you don't like into this wonderful new dream of running a cloud service. You are a $2 trillion company I've paid for services from. They should be reliable. A random outage every now and then, that's just the luck of the draw. But again, when you have 2 or 3 months in which I'm almost every time that this comes up in one of my news feeds or someone tells me about it, I have to figure out, was this something new today? Are they talking about the thing from 2 days ago? Are they talking about the thing from last week? That's bad, man.
Yeah, that is bad, isn't it? Here's the down detector snapshot from May 12th, a couple of days ago, and that really those flat lines, that's flatlined. Not good. Not good. I wonder what they're up to. It does feel like they're doing something. Maybe this is a prelude to being much more reliable. Let's cross our fingers. Anyway,
maybe they're moving from Amazon to Google Cloud servers. Maybe that's what they're doing.
There was a leak. This is from 9 to 5 Mac that claims Apple uses a multi-step sting operation to identify and fire leakers ahead of WWDC. They leave out commas, they put in commas. On Wednesday, this story was from May 10th. So on last Wednesday morning, The leaker account that was on Twitter claiming to know a broad range of details of Apple's upcoming software releases went silent. The source posted an update in which they claimed Apple identified their source and fired her through a multi-step sting operation. The leaker Analyst 941, I guess, had a single source inside of Apple.
And he was leaking information about the release of Final Cut Pro for iPad, and of course the day this story about his source being fired from Apple and being targeted by a sting operation came I think the day of or the day after that was released, because that was the canary that Apple was using. They released release information for new versions of Final Cut Mac and the Final Cut for iPad, different release dates for each person who was suspected of being the source of the leak. And so when the leaker basically said, hey, we're not seeing this until 2024, we're not going to see Final Cut for iPad until later this year. Essentially, that was Cubicle 8. Please, can you come to the office and bring everything in your office with you?
Also, Analyst 941 kind of blew it by saying it's my sister and she's working with Craig Federighi. That's pretty much going to narrow it down there. Yeah.
9 to 5 Mac decided to follow that up by talking about, this is why when we get information, like, we don't just simply cut and paste, because there can be these are techniques that we've been hearing about, not just from Apple, from other companies elsewhere. There's you can have ANSI codes that are 19 spaces, but they only actually display one of them. There can be like certain language. There could be the placement of a comma in press materials. Something is a certain shade of blue. Again, all of these combined together, that if someone is foolish enough to simply copy paste or quote directly, it allows a company that's suspicious of 8 people to figure out which of the 8 was doing it. And this person, oh boy, I don't know what they do for a living, but it's not reporting, and if it is reporting, it's not something that they were counting on doing for more than like 8 mortgage payments, because that's not you're not going to last that way.
Chance Miller, writing in 9 to 5 Mac, says the entire story reeks of lies and saving face. But I can remember back to Steve Jobs, where they would have differing.
There was a
story. A little bit about this, Alex, don't you?
Because it used to be, Apple, you didn't even have to beer board them. Beer boarding is, you take everybody out to drinks, you just keep drinking until people break down. And you didn't even, Apple employees back in the 90s, you could just get all kinds. You didn't know what the next year or two is going to be. And then suddenly, it felt like a week. It was just like, nope, nobody's talking. And I asked somebody about that might know, and they were like, well, Steve gave out a code. He gave out a product name to 3 executives, just saying this is what's coming up, and And he said, don't, if this leaks out, no one's gonna, you're all 3 of you are getting fired. And it leaked out, and it wasn't even the right product name. It was a different product name, but all 3 of them got fired. Like, he didn't care. And they were relatively high up, and they all got fired that week, and everyone stopped talking.
Yeah. There are a lot of apricot orchards in the Apple campus. A lot of secrets get buried in those apricot orchards.
Yeah. But that was it. That was the story. The story was three people who took the hit, and some people had said that they weren't even sure if it wasn't Steve that leaked it himself, so they just make the point.
I learned that from Game of Thrones. It's always a good idea to put the heads of your enemies on spikes on your outer walls, just to let them know.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a little spike thing, but it was like, it felt like, and again, it felt like it was just night and day. I don't know if Jason remembered it the weather changing so quickly, but
we weren't,
and you and Andy,
we weren't using secret sources back then, because it was actually Mac Week, which was their whole thing. And Apple, in the 90s leaked. But the fact is that Apple leaks today, mostly it's from the supply chain, but it still does happen. It's these, 95 Mac's point is good. And Mark Gurman makes the same kind of argument that, they're trying to give the information that they feel good about, but not play the game where they're so precise that their sources can be identified. And we have this now phenomenon of random leakers appearing on Twitter or in forums, and they could be liars or they could be true. You could actually set up like 5 different accounts, each of which makes a guess, and the one that's right, you say, see, this person's reliable, and then you can play that game. But at the same time, they're playing a professional game and they're amateurs and they can get burned. So it's possible that this really happened. Who knows? But like, this is also why the professionals, it's not like Apple doesn't leak, but they keep it,
watch
they
Slow
keep it on the
Horses
down low.
for the details of dead drops and other sec ops, because you really got to study that stuff.
Yeah. This is why, like, some people have access and some for years and years and years, and some people don't, because the people who they have sources that they know that I'm not going to, the information I'm going to give is going to be used in this context. This person is not a bozo. They have never burned me or the other people that I know who've spoken to this person before. I mean, that means that you're not going to be the first person to say, hey, here's the official, it's an orange, but it's sort of a tangerine orange, but they're not calling it tangerine. They're calling it Mofo Golo Jolo. And like, so you're not going to be the person who breaks the story, but it does mean that you are the person who, when they speculate about if there might be new colors, they happen to take a lot of guesses that happen to turn out to be correct.
I will defend the press's constant desire to know and the public's right
that's our job
to know. I will defend that. But on the other hand, having watched now a really dull Google event and a really dull Samsung event, all the air was let out of the balloon by prior leaks. I kind of understand Apple's design. I mean, we're still talking about what are they going to say at WWDC, and we will right up to June 4th. It does add to the excitement.
And I will say, like, as a good example of all these leaks and all the other talks, if Apple doesn't come out with a headset in June, like, all of us are going to be kind of like, what?
Well, that's the other thing. They've reserved the right not to, right? By not announcing, by not teasing, they can always stop at any point.
There's lots of stories of Apple killing products days before, like just taking that section out of the out of the keynote, like, we're not ready to talk about that, or the presentation wasn't as good as it could be, or whatever. And so they have all that freedom without having to manage expectations in that area. But what's interesting is in a lot of companies like Apple, a lot of people are willfully not interested. Like, they do not want to know what the other silo is doing, because them having that in their head can get them in trouble, and so you can always tell when people have been there for a long time, been at places like that for a long time, is because someone starts talking around them about something new and they just go somewhere else, change the subject. Like, I don't want to know what's happening.
It is a Darwinian career track where the people who cannot survive in that environment emotionally don't stay there very long. I mean, it's really, really difficult. You can be a really important researcher in audio technology, and you were competitive. Companies were competitive about hiring you, and you got a glorious offer from Apple. And now you find yourself, we want you to develop an algorithm for this. Like, okay, but it'll help for is this for phones? You don't need to know that. Just an algorithm for shaping this with this sort of resources, and it can really get you down that it's one thing if I'm creating a transistor that could be used for anything. It's another thing if you tell me that, by the way, we got the contract to do a lot of the circuit logic for the lunar lander, so we are building something that will hopefully put Americans on the moon by the end of 1969. That's the sort of thing that gets you up early in the morning and gives you your greatest job satisfaction. And I think that this compartmentalization of Apple, it helps the secrecy ball rolling, and that's valuable. But sometimes they're not. It's not every worker who wants to work under those circumstances.
What else shall we talk about? I think. Oh, one more thing. This happened to me this week. It was kind of sad. My iPhone said, I'm not going to tell you about any more COVID-19 exposures, so just forget about it. April, you may remember back to April 2020, in the first throes of the pandemic, Google and Apple got together and proposed an exposure notification system that would require cooperation from the states. California was one, Washington State was another, and I had them turned on both. Never got any. I think I got one from Washington State like 3 weeks after I got COVID. But it wasn't a system that was destined to work for a variety of reasons. But they have now turned it off. It's over. States have turned off the COVID-19 exposure notifications now that the public emergency is over.
It was pretty exciting, though, how quickly that system got put together, and with two companies like Apple and Google. Did anybody else have not a shiver of excitement, but oh my God, I'm seeing a combined Google and Apple logo. It's like I'm in an alternate universe where Apple fell on hard times or Google fell on hard times, and a check was written, and now they're both the same company.
Yeah. Apparently, 26 of the 52 states released apps. Wait a minute, 52, that's the number of cards in a deck. 50 states. A little more than half of the states released apps to make full use of notifications. 36 million Americans, that's all, installed an app or enabled exposure notifications. Remember, exposure notifications first had to be an app from the state, and then Apple and Google allowed you to turn it on in the settings, which I did because I wanted to be a good person. Only 36 million other people did. There is some evidence that, according to Engadget, the tech prevented cases. Washington State's app may have prevented 5,500 cases in its first 4 months, even though most of the population wasn't using it. California's Department of Public Health says it's still studying the benefits of the state's apps. Certainly, that would be an appropriate thing to look into. This isn't the last time we're going to have a pandemic. It might be a good thing to know, is this the way to do it, or are there other ways to do it? Engadget says, don't be surprised if health agencies and tech companies are better prepared going forward. Oh, no, I will be surprised. I will be very surprised. I expect nothing but incompetence.
Depends on what's at stake for the next major federal election.
Yes.
If it's in people's best interest to actually save lives, great. Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah. Let me take a little break, and then if you would, my friends, prepare your picks of the week in just a moment. First, though, a little plug for my dear friends, the people who are Club Twit members. Patrick, how many Club Twit members do we have now? Yes, he can do a little. Elroy will tell you, I think. Do we know? 7,500? 7,050. That's very nice. Thank you to you. Those people are paying $7 a month or more to get ad-free versions of all of our shows, to get access to the Club Twit Discord, which is a blast. 7,337, says Patrick. That's kind of elite. Isn't it? It's elite. Is that accurate? It's actually teat, but that's, close enough. Thank you to all of you who are members. Access to the Club Twit Discord, I think, is part of the fun. You also get the shows that we put out in the club but don't put out in public. We do a lot of events thanks to our community manager, Ant Pruitt. He does a great job. In fact, we've got 5 events upcoming: a fireside chat with Sean Powers, the host of Floss Weekly, the Home Theater Geeks. We do every Thursday. Do we once a month, something like that? Yeah, once a month on Thursday, June 15th, the next one. That's an example of a show that we did for a while, couldn't generate enough ad support or listener support to continue, so we canceled it, but we brought it back in the club. Club members are paying for it. And if it grows and generates an audience and advertising, we'll put it out in public. Stacy's book club's coming up end of next month, The Terraformers, Annalie Newitz's newest book. We're going to and John Jammerby's a little nervous about this. On July 14th, it'll be an after-hours Inside Twit with whiskey and fun for all. And then a fireside chat with Rod Pyle, another success story out of the club. This Week in Space launched, if you will, in the club and now is public. We also do the Hands on Mac show, Hands on Windows, Untitled Linux show, the Giz Fizz. And as I said, Scott Wilkinson's Home Theater Geeks in the club. And if you're a club member, you get to hear all of those shows, plus ad-free versions of everything. You wouldn't even hear this promo. So really, there's no point in me thanking Club Twit members because they're not hearing this. Nevertheless, we are very grateful. It is a huge portion of our budget to this point. And with 7,000 plus members, that's wonderful. And we're hoping to make it even more. I'd love to see 7,000 is about 1% of our total audience. our monthly active listeners, I'd love to see it get to 5%. That would really help us kind of solidify our future. You want to join? Please. twit.tv/club twit. There's family plans, there's corporate plans, and individual plans as well. twit.tv/club twit. Thank you. Alex Lindsay, I don't usually start with you on the pick of the week because I'm always scared that I'm going to be spending a lot of money.
Not too expensive this time.
What do you got?
I'm going to try to save everybody a little time. I'm trying to build like a little camera system with these little cameras. These are the I've already talked about these. These are the Insta360 links.
So
and
cool. Yeah.
These are little PTZ cameras, and I'm trying to build. I want to be able to send a kit out so that someone can like just plug them all into the Mac Mini, and I use a Zoom room to just pull all the individual feeds back to me so that they can show how to use how they're using a product or do a cooking. We were talking about doing cooking stuff. The hard part is how do you get long cables to these that actually work? They're a 4K camera. They require some power. And man, have I gone through a lot of cables. Like I think I've bought 6 USB-C cables right now, and I finally found one that worked. So I'm going to tell everyone, so if you ever decide you need long USB cables, the longest I've been able to get to work is 10 feet. And otherwise they just turn on and turn off. In those cables, these, I don't even know how to say it. Ainope.
It's a neologism from a Chinese company that doesn't speak English. So you pronounce it any way you want to.
But I will tell you that I cannot find other ones that work reliably other than these ones so far.
Wow.
And so if you're looking for trying to put cameras in a couple places, 10 feet is as far as I've gotten so far. I've gotten ones. The key is that they have to be minimum version 3.2 Gen 2.
Gen 2 is the key.
So these are 10 gig, 100 watt, but there's other ones that have listed that they say that they do that and they don't. So and the other thing that's important about these is that they have a right turn on it, and that becomes important because
you plug that into the camera end.
When you put it in the camera end, you want it to go to the side. Otherwise, it just spins out.
It'll pull the camera.
Something else you have to deal with it. So anyway, I'll show more when we get it closer because it's I think it'll be a fun little kit. But it has been a lot of I've bought a lot of cables.
Is that Insta the best webcam?
There's 2 that we're looking at. So the webcam, the OBSBot makes a 4K version. We haven't gotten it yet because it's in pre-release. The only reason that we potentially want to use it more than the Insta360 is because it supports OSC, Open Sound Control, which means that we can control all the aspects of the camera through programs like Isadora and other things like that. So we're interested in the OBSBot, but we haven't used it. As far as what I've used, this is the best webcam I've used. So this is this Insta360 link. It's about $300. It is definitely the best webcam we've used.
Is it as good as using your iPhone with camo or with the Mac OS?
It's different. So I will tell you that the color looks better on the camera, on the iPhone camera, but you can get out of the gate. But this has full on color control.
Oh, okay.
And it's a PTZ. You can hang it upside down also and have it, be a product camera. You can put it, it's got a built into it a 1/4-20 on the bottom. It also will open up to go onto a monitor. So it's really small. And it doesn't, it's easy to say that you want to use a phone, but constantly connecting your phone to your computer, not so fun. It's in a pinch, fine, but it's not what you build around, and so it's also not a replacement for the camera that I'm using, which is a Sony FX30. But as a travel camera, and also again, what we're looking at is how do you have a digital event where someone's showing you a product or showing you something on a desk. And these PTZs become super powerful if any kind of PTZ. But right now, the OBSBot is one we're looking at. If Insta360 added OSC, we'd stop.
Is the OBSBot the new Tiny 2? Is that what you want to check
I think it's the new Tiny 4K.
It's 4K. It's the Tiny 2.
Yeah. Tiny 2, yeah. And it has OSC support. It's got it looks like it has a really nice chip on it. And but we haven't tested it yet because it was in pre-order. I have. As of last week, maybe it's shipping now.
No, it's still pre-order, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's in pre-order, and so I haven't gotten an early release or anything else. And so I have like 4 of these guys, and I've been really happy with them. We use them for a lot of stuff. I mean, you can, one of what we're doing is using a Mac Mini Pro and putting all 4 cameras into that Mac Mini. and then not trying to cut on the Mac Mini, just sending all feeds back into Zoom and then using Zoom ISO on the other end to grab all those feeds and put them back into SDI, sending them back to us. So.
Well, and the point is, of course, that the pick is not the camera. The pick is the cable.
The cable, which turns out to be harder to find than the camera. Was pretty easy. I was like, I ordered one of them, but it has been like a week and a half of me ordering cables, and downloading them and then going, nope, sorry.
Hello.
But my screensaver turned on my other computer and it's keyed over and it's on a draw. So anyway, I forgot to turn that off.
Ainope, Ainope. Which is a terrible name.
It's a terrible name, but it's the only one I've gotten.
Ainope. So maybe it's Ainope. Maybe they're making a statement about AI, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
I think they're making a statement about me.
It's about you.
I feel very, very singled out right now.
No. Ainope.
Fine.
Andy Ihnatko
I don't spend that much time thinking about what you think of me.
Proper
elocution.
Elephants.
Egg yolks.
Well, if you forget the name now, you're really not trying too hard. It's on Amazon, about $18, $19, $18.99. The Ainope USBC. They actually have a 6-foot as well, but it sounds like the 10 challenge.
All the 6-foots work. So if you're looking for a long one, like the 6-foots all work. That's not a problem. It's the long ones that the 10 feet and above. And it again, the only reason I made it a pick was because I've put so much work into it. And it was just like, well, I don't want everybody to have to put so much work into it.
This is an infrastructure pick. It's very important.
Yeah. And I'm giving everyone a break. I promise next week will be scary again.
Oh, thank you. This is why I started with you this week. Andy Ihnatko, pick of the week.
This is something really, really handy that's been around for 5 years that I only discovered 3 days ago. That's how sometimes these things happen. Google Registry, they control a whole bunch of really bananas top-level domains, and they're doing something really interesting with the .new TLD .new. They're using it as a bunch of shortcuts. That's like if you have a web app like eBay or Google Docs or Microsoft Office Suite, you can register a very simple. I can type. If I want to create a new Google Doc, I can go docs.google.com, click a button to say create a new document, or I can just type docs.new in the address of my web browser. And immediately it just opens Google Docs, creates a brand new document.
This is cool.
Yeah, if I type excel.new, I get a brand new Excel sheet. If I type post.new, I get a brand new post to my WordPress blog. There are like dozens and dozens of these. A lot of these are borderline useless, not totally useless, but you could see you would put it in the useless category.
You mean like blockchain.new?
Create a new. There's some of these are like create a. I don't even want to say what it is, but like all these productivity apps where it's like this thing that you would probably take 3 days planning, and you don't mind clicking 3 buttons to make this happen. Yeah, but
businessloan.new with Bank West. Yeah, that's useful.
Your business might be in trouble if you need a shortcut for getting new loans. You've got supply chain issues. You've got cash issues.
Adobe's using it though. Create.new, Spark.new, and Stories.new. That's cool.
And the thing is, if you find one thing that you do all the time, for me, the number of times where I create a brand new Google Doc, whether it is for a project, like for show notes for something that I'm for my Google podcast or whatever, or it's just I need a blank document that I can then dump notes into and be able to access everywhere. The number of times that I've done that like 5-step process to create a new Google Doc and just be able to type docs.new or even just create a bookmark in my bookmarks bar and just be able to click this one button to make that happen. That's pretty darn cool. It's again, this has been around for 5 years, and
well, that's good because so many people use it. In fact, our sponsor Miro uses it. So you could do Miro.new to create a new collaborative whiteboard. So that's cool.
And it's free, of course. And because it's Google, they might kill it at any moment. But for now, we have something cool.
There is a little controversy because Google, they have a lot of crazy TLDs. Is now planning on .zip
and .mp4. And like a lot of like file name extensions that would make it really, really easy for a bad actor to create like a malicious website that people think are just, here is an actual file
play an
that you'll be
MP4
downloading.
or let's unzip a file. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I hope Google recants on that, because that is security researchers are freaked out about .zip. In fact, there is if you're curious about it, somebody's put together a demo where you go to, let me see if I can find it, where you go to you type in your browser something.zip, and it will download a file and open it from a, it's not a malicious website. It's a proof of concept, but scary.
But who could have foreseen such an abuse of such a simple thing? Certainly not a quaint little fudge company like Google. They make fudge, caramel popcorn. They have pies that are seasonal. Really?
They're already doing it.
Foreseen this.
Get up to speed with .zip starting at $15 a year. So if you are a malefactor, here's your opportunity. Mr. Jason Snell, pick of the week.
Last year sometime I talked about one of my favorite all-time iOS games, which is Alto's Adventure.
Love it.
Which is the beautiful soundtrack, beautiful art style, left to right. It's essentially an endless runner where you're snowboarding or sand surfing, peaceful, calm, kind of zen, but also challenging if you want it to be. Well, I love that game so much. And yet if you had come to me and said, well, what if you did Alto's Adventure, but instead of flying around or surfing around a 2D space, essentially from left to right, you are in a giant 3D open world. And that game is called Laya's Horizon.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Well, you could do that, but if you don't want it to go there, you can fly around the island in Laya's Horizon from Snowman, the same people who brought us Alto's Adventure. It is available. What's the price, you say? Free for Netflix members. What? It's a Netflix game. So you got to log in with your Netflix account. It's available in the App Store and the Play Store. I've been playing it for the last week. It's so good. It is so good. It is the same art style, the same kind of vibe, the same kind of chill background music, but and there are a lot of little references that are in there, but instead of being in this 2D left to right, you are a character with these little flying capes, and you have different missions that you get to do that involve flying around and discovering this enormous volcanic island that's full of villages and people, and you can do races with other flyers, and
it's kind of uncanny how much this looks like Zelda. It is,
yeah. It is like a super chill iPad Zelda. So if you want to do that, like there's no fighting or anything. It's all about like fly here or do this or fly over there. Yeah. But it is, I honestly cannot believe that this game exists, because I loved Alto so much, but the idea of it being this 3-dimensional flying version, but that's what it is. So if you're a Netflix subscriber, you just get this. On your device, try it out. The tutorial is really well done, because it's basically just 2 thumbs on your touchscreen to do all the flying behaviors. So they have a really nice tutorial that walks you through the various gestures in order to fly, and then you just start getting little simple missions, and you learn to fly, and you get to fly better, and you get more missions. It's really a beautiful thing. Well done, so well done by Snowman. Laya's Horizon.
We mocked it when Netflix said we're going to get into gaming.
They got some good games. There are a few good Netflix games out there already.
Very, very interesting. I mean, this is not a pick, but I have to give some credit to Micah Sargent. We were talking about gaming, and he recommended a game on Steam called Timberborn, in which you play a beaver. You build a little beaver community. It's kind of like one of these top-down real-time strategy games like Age of Empires without any combat. So now this will be a whole theme, combat-free versions of games.
Oh, they look so cute.
It's really cute. Yeah, you get to be a beaver, and you build dams.
Get pretty angry.
You might have angry beavers, but there's no foes except biting.
Snowman's
nature.
Previous game, which does not look like Altos, but it's actually also a very entertaining game, is called Lucky Luna, and it is also a Netflix game. So
nice.
There's some good Netflix games, and
I'm going to really have to check these out. That's fascinating.
Check them out.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'll be building my beaver dam in Timberborn, available for the Mac on
busy.
Steam. Busy. That concludes this thrilling, gripping edition of MacBreak Weekly. Thank you, Jason Snell. We missed you last week. So glad to have you back.
Good to be back. Thank you.
Yay.
Go to 6colors.com/Jason, and you will see a remarkable assortment of things Jason does.
You can remark on it if you like. I got 9 jobs.
I
It's
think
fine.
they're great.
I work in my garage. I don't
Honestly,
I don't get how much.
you deserve credit because every podcast you're on is great. So, and that's I can't even say that. There's the Incomparable. There's Six Colors podcast, but then you
Robot
do
or not,
total party kill. Did you see? There's going to be a D&D cable channel coming. You might want to get on.
Makes
on
sense. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Wizards of the Coast, call me.
Yeah.
We'll get on there.
So many great shows. The Doctor Who Flashcast.
Sure.
There's some
60th anniversary of Doctor Who.
There's some Doctor Who news. Who coming up.
Sure.
The Power of the Doctor. You haven't done anything on that in a while. Might want to bring that one back.
It's a recap show, like the Vulcan Hello is our Star Trek recap show. It's just after the episode is on, then we give our review of it. So Doctor Who is in a little gap right now, but they're coming back for their
gap. Yeah.
60th anniversary of that show, and so I won't shut up about it, but not until November.
Go to DoctorWho.new to find out more. No. And then this is we were talking about streaming earlier, and you mentioned Julia. This is the show you do with Julia Alexander. No relation to Jason Alexander. Downstream, breaking down the business of binge watching.
Yeah, that's a good one. Coming back later this week.
And I love Tim Goodman. I have to listen.
Yeah, he was my little guest. We used to do a podcast together, and then he sort of moved on and left the business and is now doing a Substack. But Julia was traveling, so we got Tim on as a guest, and that was a lot of fun too.
I always would read his reviews. He was really good. I'll have to listen to read his Substack. That's cool.
Yeah.
sixcolors.com/Jason.
Thank you.
Andy Anako, WGBH is calling. When will you pick up?
I am off this week, but I'm going to be on next Wednesday at 1:10 in the afternoon. You can go to WGBHnews.org to listen to it live or later. Actually, I was also up at the crack of 8 a.m. this morning to talk to Bob Srod on WGN Radio in Chicago. So if you want to listen to what I said there, again, I was not. 8 a.m. is, oh my God, that's farmer's hours for me. But still, I did get through the segment. Go to WGNradio.com/Bob Srod, or just go from the top, you'll find it. And my segment is just broken out right there. You can listen to it right there.
Thank you. Great to see you.
Always. Thank you.
Mr. Wonderful Alex Lindsay, host of Office Hours. Do you call yourself the host of Office Hours?
I don't really call myself anything.
He's the creator of and a participant in a fantastic series.
The shadowy Svengali-like figure lurking in the background.
Today, live camera and lens tracking for virtual production. Wow.
Well, and yesterday was the business of theater. So we had these incredible folks that work in theater talking about what it takes to actually make theater work, and the business of those processes and what you have to think about. Today we had live tracking with Nick Justishin from Drexel University. So we're coming in from a studio at Drexel, walking through different technologies that they use to track cameras. Tomorrow we have Kilohertz, which is they make a program called Phase Plant, which just kind of amazed me. It's a synthesizer it's
a great name.
It is. And it is crazy. It's a synthesizer. What I saw, someone demoed a helicopter taking off and flying away with a synthesizer, and it just sounded real. And I was like, okay, I have to have these. I have to figure out how this thing actually works. And then we've got guys. I don't think we can say exactly where they're from, but they're very, very, very high end HDR guys coming on Thursday.
Nice.
Michael Drazen and Drazen and Jim Toten, and they work on big HDR projects. And so they're going to be talking about glass to glass, what it takes to have HDR get to your screen. And Saturday, we've got the pedagogy wheel so as we're doing some education before we move to, again, this summer, we're going to all accessibility for a couple weeks. So we're excited.
Can't wait for that. OfficeHours.global. Doug Wood says the second hour is really good today, by the way. Now, here's the deal. Good. Not all hours go on YouTube. You can watch the YouTube videos, but if you want to participate, you should go to officehours.global and join so that you can go into the Zoom and listen to all the hours, as it were. Yes. If you want to hire Alex, and I bet you there's a few people who could use your assistance. I was watching a stream the other day saying they didn't hire Alex. was Google I.O., actually. They didn't hire Alex.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
They should have hired Alex. 090.media. That's his day job. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Jason. Thanks to all of you who joined us, both live and on demand. The live version of the show, we record it at 11 a.m. Pacific on Tuesdays. You can go to watch the stream at live.twit.tv or listen. There's streaming audio and video there. If you're watching or listening live, chat live at irc.twit.tv. That's our chat room, open to all. Web browser works, irc.twit.tv. Of course, Club Twit members get special velvet rope access in the Club Twit Discord. Be a member, join the fun. After the show is over, there's on-demand versions on the website, twit.tv/mbw. You can also, when you're there, click a link to go to the YouTube channel that's dedicated to MacBreak Weekly, another way to watch, or get the RSS feed and add it to your favorite podcast. Oh, look. What am I doing there? I'm holding something.
A logo, a lights gently on your hand like a Disney princess.
That's the new Daddy Care Plus I'm offering to all my children. Yes. Only children may apply. And DNA test required. Thank you, everybody. Oh, look. Galia is hanging out with Doctor Who. That's pretty cool.
We got a lot of Doctor Who pictures in the Discord
a lot of
right
Doctor
now.
Who pictures.
You poked the bear, Leo. You poked the bear. Now here come the pictures.
Big mistake in the Discord. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. But now I'm sad to say it's time to get back to work because break time is over. Bye-bye.
Oh, hey, that's a really nice iPhone you have there. You totally picked the right color. Hey, since you do use an iPhone and maybe use an iPad or an Apple Watch or an Apple TV, well, you should check out iOS Today. It's a show that I, Micah Sargent, and my co-host Rosemary Orchard host every Tuesday right here on the Twit Network. It covers all things iOS, tvOS, HomePodOS, watchOS, iPadOS. It's all the OSs that Apple has on offer, and we love to give you tips and tricks about making the most of those devices, checking out great apps and services, and answering your tech questions. I hope you check it out.